to a horse and dragged him through a briar patch. Some are now saying these statements from Mr. Kressbeckler last week may have incited the attack.
Bootlegging Congressman Cummins ought to be tied to a horse and drugged through a briar patch.
Mr. Kressbeckler's show is billed as an opinion and entertainment program.
Yes,
and
he
even calls himself nothing but a caterwauling old badger, so the claim that he would incite people to violence seems pretty far-fetched.
He displayed a map of Congressman Cummings' home in relation to the nearest briar patch, told his viewers where to purchase a, quote, good pulling horse, and used a life-size dummy of Congressman Cummings to demonstrate effective knot tying techniques.
Right. I think most reasonable people would see that as simply a ribald political satire.
Right.
Briar patch is obviously a metaphor for the prickly political atmosphere in Washington, and drag from a horse means something else.
Makes sense to me.
This is the Onion News Network.
Don't miss a moment of Free Talk Live. Get our archives daily via our podcast at feeds.freetalklive.com. Free Talk Live.
Well, what is up, all of our liberty-loving friends? This is another fantastic episode of Liberty at Night with Nate and Charlie on the Free Talk Live network. And this hour of Free Talk Live is brought to you by Dash Digital Cash. Dash is the cryptocurrency designed to be used for spending. Rising fees have made Bitcoin useless for purchases, but Dash continues to have fees less than 1 cent per transaction and has implemented really cool features to ensure it's undefeated as the most useful cryptocurrency in the marketplace. From a technical standpoint, Dash transactions are irreversible and its network is protected from 51% attacks by their chain locks technology. There's no need to wait for a confirmation before considering the Dash transaction complete, so it's great for merchants. Dash is one of the oldest cryptocurrencies and is widely available on exchanges and in multi-crypto wallets. It's easy to get and use Dash. Start by learning more at dash.org. And a big thanks to Dash DAO for sending us 32 Dash per month to promote Dash on the air. Visit dash.org to learn about Dash, dash.org. Today is episode 1107. Thank you for being here. Or if you're listening on Liberty at Night, it's like episode 8. Something like that. I don't know how long. I'll have to look and see how much Dash we have in our account to know how many episodes we've done.
Took us 1,000 episodes to get on the radio.
There you go.
Yeah.
Everyone just do 1,000 episodes and you'll be on the radio too. We've got some things to talk about today. You know, Charlie, yesterday, we talked yesterday and I had this weird moment happen where I started to feel like I was wrong about something.
Yeah.
I don't know if you've ever felt that before.
Maybe once or twice in my life.
We started to talk about this Joe Biden versus Donald Trump thing, and we talked about the poll results showing that Donald Trump was beating Biden and also beating him in the swing states, 5 out of the 6 swing states. And of course, as I've said several times, I just see no way that he's actually going to be able to win the election. And it turns out there's another poll from the part of this New York Times poll that asks a very important question that we forgot to ask yesterday. And the question is a serious question here. What would you do if Trump is convicted on some of these charges that he has? Because he got a lot of criminal charges out there right now, like 91 of them out there. And so would that change your vote? And it turns out people who said that they would not vote for Biden in the earlier polls, 6% of those people said that they would vote for Biden now. And this changes the results to Biden net 49%, Trump 39% if he gets convicted, and puts Biden in the lead in every one of those states that we said Trump was winning in if there ends up being a conviction. I don't think we can just brush off that part and say that it's not going to have any effect on anyone.
That's interesting.
Mm-hmm. So
jailing your political opponents works.
Yes, it does work. We've created the incentive structure now. We're going to follow South America's lead or whatever it is. And
China.
That's the new strategy. You just put your political opponents in jail. You charge them with a bunch of random things, probably a lot of things that you did too, but who cares? You just go ahead and charge them while you're in power, and you won't have to worry about the whole re-election nonsense.
Amen. This is why.
You see why it's so important.
Why people, this is the incentive for, governments to imprison their political opponents.
This is why they do it, and you see why it's so
then you can
important
still
that they're
have
doing right now.
a free and fair election.
Bailey said, is this what freedom feels like? It is.
Yep. It ain't free, man.
This, Charlie, you know what this is?
Cost $1.05 and a Republican in jail.
There's a better word for this. It's called democracy.
I know.
That's what it is.
Yeah.
Biden
free and fair
is
elections.
protecting democracy with free and fair elections.
Yeah.
And you just jail your political opponent
Exactly.
beforehand, and then the people decide afterwards.
Yeah.
Okay, I had a random nuanced conversation. You know how we talked about that shooter manifesto yesterday? Although technically it's a trans manifesto. But anyhow, missed opportunity from yesterday. Tranifesto, I think is the other.
Yeah.
Tranifesto. I was listening to Morning Wire, which is a Daily Wire thing. I get some news from it on my drive over here in the morning. It's pretty cool. I recommend it. 15 minutes, and you get some news updates that are only slightly slanted to the right. It's not too bad. It's like listening to NPR, only done by the Daily Wire. But anyway, they have this policy, and it got me thinking. They have this policy where they don't name the shooter. They've been doing this for a while, and the idea is, it's a super annoying thing that they do, because they'll publish like 100 articles about the shooting and do all these podcast episodes and everything, and do everything except for, like, I'm not telling you the name.
The anonymous
of the
shooter.
person. They'll talk about it forever. Yeah. Like, you can't get the name anywhere else, but you still spend all this time learning about the shooter. And
of course they would dead name a tranny shooter. That's the Daily Wire for you.
And so I was listening this morning, and they didn't want to give the shooter's name, but they were talking about the manifesto. And it got me thinking, this whole manifesto not being released. And I know everyone's been talking about how, we need to get this released. Why is it that they're not releasing this thing? And we only got 3 pages from Steven Crowder. There's probably 100 pages in this thing, and probably a video too. And we don't even know if Crowder cherry picked the page that had to do with white privilege and fancy schools and stuff like that. There could be way more. And maybe we'll figure that out. It got me thinking. Okay, the idea with the Daily Wire is that you're not going to name the names because you don't want to give people notoriety, and you don't want to incentivize future shooters, right? Like, you don't want to make them famous, essentially, and you don't want to incentivize future people.
Right.
Yeah. But what about the manifesto? It got me thinking about whether or not it was actually a good idea to release a shooter's manifesto. Because there's this movie I like, and it starts off with this terrorist having this manifesto, and they're wanting him to give over some information, and he says, "Oh, well, if you read my manifesto on the air, then I'll give you whatever information you want." The important thing was getting these ideas out there to the masses and sparking this revolution or whatever, So it got me thinking, is it actually a good thing to release this shooter's manifesto, or would that incentivize future people to say, well, I could write up a whole book of terrible ideas and the entire world would talk about it if I just go out and do some terrible enough things?
Initially, I'm always on the default of give as much information as you can.
Mm-hmm. I agree with you. I agree. It is information.
Yeah, people should get to know what the truth is.
But so this is just me. This is just me feeling weird about what the Daily Wire does, because they won't name the name because they don't want to give the shooter any notoriety.
Not telling you the name.
But they do want to push for the manifesto to be released so we can all read what this person's thoughts were and everything, which to me just kind of defeats the entire purpose of that. It really just made me wonder whether or not it would be a good thing to release this person's crazy ideas out there to the world. I still agree with you that you want to have all the information, and those things should be brought to light. If that's what people are thinking, if this is the rationale behind why they do really terrible things, that we need to know. We need to know as a society.
That's why police carry flashlights, to bring things,
so they can bring things
into the light.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Well, they need to bring a flashlight onto this manifesto, I guess.
I know.
And get it out there.
Tranifesto.
So
Tranifesto.
Trans Manifesto, I think, is a pretty good one too. I underline where they said the Daily Wire's not naming. And then they go on to read put out all the person's thoughts and beliefs. Like, you can't do anything. I'm just trying to figure out what the heck they're actually trying to do. And someone just said it's their version of virtue signaling. I completely agree. I get so annoyed every time they do this. I'm trying to figure out what the idea is.
Hey, it got you talking.
And the rest of the thing,
Well, white people are privileged.
Well, yeah.
White people are rich.
Do you think it has anything to do with what has been going on in the country over the last few years, 10 years, you know?
I mean, I think you're naive if you don't think that the BLM protests have anything to do with this. Absolutely. You know, and then the whole black safe spaces, and you're not allowed to talk certain parts of the campus if you're not black.
The entire woke movement, really.
You don't think whatever her name, White Fragility, that book, you know, because here's the thing. She probably felt guilty as someone who went to this private school.
Yeah. White guilt.
She probably had some white guilt. So not only did she want to take herself out, she wanted to take as many of these perpetrators of violence out with her.
Interesting.
She didn't want these privileged kids to grow up and perpetrate more violence on black people.
Well, have no fear, Charlie, because the guy who's currently...
I don't want to name her name, the author's name.
No, you don't want to say it.
No. I'm not gonna say it. Robin, I'm not going to tell you your last name, Robin something.
No, we don't want to identify people like that.
I'm going to dead name these authors.
Luckily, the guy who's winning in the polls currently for president has a way that we're going to fix these problems, you know, because you see people going to colleges. These college campuses are just nuts these days. Remember when me and you went and saw that No Safe Spaces documentary? I feel like it's gotten way worse since then.
With Adam Carolla.
That was pretty crazy too.
Yeah.
And so Trump has a plan to revolutionize higher education when he gets elected. Okay, and there's a video associated with this. We can read the description and then watch the video, or watch the video and then read the description.
Let's read it first, because the first one is hilarious.
This is Trump's plan, the Republican...
My plan!
...nominee for president, probably.
I have a plan, a great plan. Create a free, federally funded online university.
Hold on.
Yeah.
A what?
Create a free, federally funded. Or that could read a federally funded free online university called American Academy.
American Academy.
The name matters. But here's the thing.
It's American.
Trump already failed at one university.
He doesn't have a great track record with this whole thing.
In fact, I'm pretty sure he had to pay out some money for the Trump University failure.
What he didn't have was the sole authorization to use force over other people, to fund it for free.
For free, exactly. He's going to ban wokeness and jihadism.
Okay.
Allow credentials to be used to apply for government and federal contractor jobs. You know?
Good.
Funnel those good government workers right through the system.
Right up to your free, federally funded school.
Grant credit to students for, they've got billions of dollars, just like but just like most companies.
Yeah, I hate Harvard as much as the next guy, but if that's where people sent their money and that's where they wanted it to go and go into the school's endowment, now, these colleges deserve all the criticism in the world for how terrible they are, why they're so expensive when they're sitting on billions of dollars in endowments and putting, bankrupting kids who are wanting to go to school there. Okay.
Sue and fine institutions that fail to uphold free speech laws are terrorists and sympathizers of many, many different dimensions. We can't let...
We spend a lot of money on higher education, and colleges are turning our students into commies and terrorists, which is the same thing. You could have just said commies. And then sympathizers of many, many different dimensions, worst of them being communism, and saying that we can't let this happen. I would let the market decide. I would let the market figure that out.
But then also, he says, sue and fine institutions that fail to uphold free speech laws or encourage anti-Semitism. Like, you're free to be anti-Semitic. Now, I morally disagree with that, but you're free to have pro-Palestine. Like, free speech is still free speech. So how are you going to ban wokeness and jihadism, but then still stand up for free speech?
How are you going to ban wokeness and jihadism when one is this, I won't say progressive, but it's really regressive or whatever, but this ultra progressive form of culture, and jihadism, which is like an ultra conservative form of a culture at the same time. And you're going to fine institutions that fail to uphold free speech laws at the same time.
Free conservative speech. It's like, but Trump is smart though, because he takes what all the people want to hear and he just lays them out in sentences.
Yeah.
And people don't care how he's logically going to get there. That doesn't matter because most people aren't. Actually, almost everyone. No one's logical. Hardly anyone. Maybe the autistic community. And that's about it.
Yeah.
Everyone else, it's literally...
It's emotions
Someone
first.
says something and you feel a certain way and you're like, yeah, I'm voting for that guy. Because he's going to ban wokeness and promote free speech.
My wife would respond with, well, you're very emotional about thinking logically.
I mean, we're all emotional, but some people are emotionally intelligent enough to be able to process
You wouldn't
their
know anything
emotions,
about that. Yeah.
to be able to process their emotions logically and not just act on feelings.
Let's play the clip of Trump talking about this right quick. It's a problem because what you'll see a lot in this episode, if we have time to run through everything that's in it today, which we should really, but you see just a lot of contradictions all over the place. There's no core philosophy. There's no core logic to anything. We talked about the Daily Wire thing, where they don't want to name the shooter, but they want to make sure that person's manifesto gets out there to the world. Like, which one is it? You don't want to help incentivize them. You do want to incentivize them. And then we're going to talk about a couple things here in a second where nuance really matters in some of these conversations. But what bothers me are these conservatives who hate wokeness. They hate what's going on at the colleges. They typically don't like big government unless their guys in control of it, which we've seen. But the main question is...
Unless they're cult leaders in control.
American Academy. Listen, y'all, Trump, if he gets elected, he's going to have 4 years. Who runs American Academy after that? Is American Academy just going to be a free, federally funded communist academy where we streamline the commie process through people?
Straight to the
you
government?
You can't guarantee me what this thing is going to be teaching. Hey, let's hear what Trump had to say about this.
Recent weeks, Americans have been
About women?
horrified to see students and faculty at Harvard and other once respected universities expressing support for the savages and jihadists who attacked Israel. We spend more money on higher education than any other country, and yet they're turning our students into communists and terrorists and sympathizers of many, many different dimensions. We can't let this happen. It's time to offer something dramatically different. Under the plan I'm announcing today, we will take the billions and billions of dollars that we will collect by taxing, fining, and suing excessively large private university endowments, and we will then use that money to endow a new institution called the American Academy. Its mission will be to make a truly world-class education available to every American, free of charge, and do it without adding a single dime to the federal debt. This institution will gather an entire universe of the highest quality educational content covering the full spectrum of human knowledge and skills and make that material available to every American citizen online for free. Whether you want lectures or ancient histories or an introduction to financial accounting or training in a skilled trade, the goal will be to deliver it and get it done properly. Using study groups, mentors, industry partnerships, and the latest breakthrough in computing, this will be a truly top-tier education option for the people. It will be strictly non-political, and there will be no wokeness or jihadism allowed. None of that's going to be allowed. Most importantly, the American Academy will compete directly with the existing and very costly four-year university system by granting students degree credentials that the U.S. government and all federal contractors will henceforth recognize. The Academy will award the full and complete equivalent of a bachelor's degree. In addition, to help the 40 million Americans who have some college education but no degree, the American Academy will grant credit for past coursework at legacy institutions and give you the chance to complete your education at the American Academy for free and much more quickly than is now possible or available.
When are they going to figure out that this dude is a liberal Democrat from New York? And he's putting it right out in front, basically. Spends more money than any president in history. Now, of course, there was a pandemic, but still, he signed the bills. Okay? He spent the money. He did not get to budget neutral like he promised.
No.
Okay.
He said he was going to erase the debt at one point in time.
Right. We increased the debt massively. So he's a big spender, always has been in his personal life as well as government life. Imagine being a billionaire and then having access to trillions, you know? And then now he's coming out with free education. And we know that'll never work.
It's so many.
And when is anything run by the government a good thing?
First off, yeah, that's the point right there. What track record from the U.S. government do we have in knowing that they're going to put together this online college that's going to be better than all of the other colleges out there that are for profit? It's going to run on money taxed out of other people's accounts. Listen, I try to not let my hatred for the Ivy League schools.
But what happens when that money runs out?
No, they've got so much money. That's the other thing. How much money do they have? That's something I want to know. We could probably Google that. How much money is in endowments in the whatever legacy college, Ivy League, whatever you want to call it? Really enough to do this? I mean, good Lord, the Obamacare website costs $2 billion. So how are we going to tax the money that they have? And then, as libertarians, is it even right to tax the money that they have? No, because it's their money, and people gave it to them. They left it to them when they kicked the bucket. They sent their money over there for whatever reason. They have these endowments, and that's what people freely did with their money.
Harvard University has 53 billion. Yale has 42 billion. University of Texas has 40 billion. Stanford 38 billion. Princeton 37 billion. The total endowment market value of U.S. institutions stood at $807 billion.
So let me phrase it to you this way, a little differently.
I wonder what the Catholic Church is, but it's worldwide.
He's doing a really good job.
Catholic Church has to be trillion, at least.
Yeah, it's a lot.
I know that Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints, though, those
probably got a lot.
I know they're upwards of 20, 30, 40 billion.
So he frames this as targeting these colleges like Harvard who have all this money, and that's really smart because it triggers an emotion. And you're like, oh yeah, I hate those colleges. They shouldn't have that money. We should put this towards Trump University. Coming right up, we're going to finish up this conversation and then get into a lot more stuff from this week on Liberty at Night.
My name is Angel Rach. I'm a mother of 2 teenage children, and I fought all the way to the Supreme Court for the right to use the medicine that saved my life. I've been permanently disabled for 10 years, with an inoperable brain tumor, wasting syndrome, and several other serious conditions. For 4 years, I was in a wheelchair, in so much pain, I couldn't even hug my kids. The hardest part was looking in their eyes and seeing how much they were suffering because of my medical condition. The medicine that gave me my life back and gave my kids their mom back was cannabis, also known as medical marijuana. With medical marijuana, I can walk, maintain my weight, and I can be a mom. Without it, my doctors believe that I would die. To learn more about medical marijuana, contact Marijuana Policy Project at 1-877-JOIN-MPP or on the web at mpp.org.
From Feature Story News in Washington, I'm Benji Haya. Israel has marked 1 month since the October 7th terror attacks, a massacre by Hamas which left more than 1,400 people dead. In weeks past, Hamas says that more than 10,000 Palestinians have been killed in airstrikes in Gaza, where residents are bracing themselves for a full incursion into the territory. Already, Israeli troops are in the heart of Gaza City. Sarah Coates has been following developments from Tel Aviv.
Israeli forces have completely cut the north and the south of the Gaza Strip in half. Tanks, troops and other heavy artillery and machinery on the ground inside the coastal enclave. Now it comes as the families of hostages have held a vigil in Jerusalem at the Wailing Wall, calling on the Netanyahu government to do more to bring these 242 people home.
Russia has formally pulled out of a key post-Cold War security deal that limited conventional forces build-up near Europe's border. NATO countries have condemned the withdrawal from the treaty and suspended it following Moscow's move. Daria Bondarchuk reports from the Russian capital.
Russian Foreign Ministry said the Treaty on Conventional Armed Forces in Europe has expired as of Tuesday, announcing the exit. Moscow said NATO's expansion in recent decades has made the pact untenable. NATO countries condemned Russia's pullout and have, on their part, suspended the deal for as long as necessary. The United States said it would be unacceptable for it and its allies to remain bound by the treaty that Russia had ditched.
Millions of people in nearly 40 US states have been taken to the polls on Tuesday in elections that should offer a verdict on Joe Biden, a year out from the presidential vote. Americans are choosing governors in Kentucky and Mississippi, deciding legislative control in New Jersey and Virginia, and determining whether the Ohio state constitution should protect abortion rights. Elsewhere, Portugal's Prime Minister Antonio Costa has resigned after a police raid on his official residence. Authorities are investigating alleged corruption related to concessions for lithium mining and the production of hydrogen. Our Southern Europe correspondent Giles Gibson has the details.
In a televised statement that took Portugal by surprise, Antonio Costa said that he'd met with the president to hand in his resignation. He also said that his conscience is clear, but that, quotes, "The dignity of the functions of Prime Minister is not compatible with any suspicion about his integrity." Portuguese police have detained Costa's chief of staff and also named Infrastructure Minister João Galamba as a formal suspect as part of their investigation into alleged corruption at the top levels of government.
From bureaus worldwide, this is FSN.
We're still not sure why you'd want to watch, but our video feed is streaming nightly for free at cam.freetalklive.com.
All right, this is Liberty at Night with Nate and Chuck on the Free Talk Live Network, and we are back. Make sure, by the way, you go find our daily podcast called Good Morning Liberty on your favorite podcast app. I'm going to join gmail.com and join the live group so you can be part of this conversation every single day of the week when we want to do a new episode. We were in the middle of this conversation about Trump's American Academy, talking about college endowments. Let's get back to it.
Oh, hang on. Sorry.
What's up?
The endowment funds of the 20 degree granting post-secondary institutions with the largest endowments by rank order. So this is 20 of them, from Harvard all the way down to Cornell by the end of the fiscal year of 2021. So, of course, this is when the market was ridiculously high. Remember, it peaked in November of 2021. They started the beginning of 2021 at $691 billion. They ended the fiscal year of 2021 at $927.1 billion. So almost $1 trillion between the top 20 universities.
So how about this, conservatives or conservative libertarians who are fine with this? Let's say that we're not going to take it from these colleges because we all hate these colleges. Let's say that we're going to take it out of Apple's bank account because they have a bunch of cash sitting in their bank account that they've saved up over a lot of time. Or we're going to take it from Warren Buffett's bank account and we're going to tax this money that they're hoarding, keeping out of the economy while people are struggling, and we're going to take this and we're going to start a free public university by taking it from these people who are hoarding this wealth, and we're going to put it to better use. And the answer would be no. The only thing that changes is that you very strongly hate the people who have this money right now, and so you would jump on it. And the even bigger question, would they even be able to do it? It's probably going to go more something like when the U.S. government does something. It would probably take longer than Trump's term to even fully put together because they're going to be building an entire online college. They're going to spend a bunch of money doing that. It's going to take years for them to put it all together.
Trump probably won't be in office.
And he'll be out of office before the thing even starts. And after that, you might have Gavin Newsom running the American Academy. After that, who gets to decide what the course content is on this thing? That we're going to take money from the economy, from private institutions, bank accounts, and fund this free online course. And once you do that, then you talk about the notion of something being free, everyone being able to go and do it and get these degrees from it. You've completely destroyed the value of any degree. You know what you have to do if you go to American Academy and you get your bachelor's? You've got to go to another institution and get another degree, a master's or a doctorate, to set yourself apart from all the people who got the free American Academy degrees. It's basically going to be a giant community college. No one cares.
It's going to be as valuable as a high school diploma.
Yeah.
Yeah. And then you could probably spend this $1 trillion in a matter of, God, they could easily do it in a year. So then what? Once you run out of the trillion, let's take 100% of all the endowments of all these private universities. Right now we have the top 20, which is almost $1 trillion. What? You're telling me they're not going to spend $250 billion a year on this free education?
The thing
you think people are going to make videos for free? You think the professors are going to work for free?
Well, they got to pay for it. They got to pay for it somehow. What's going to happen to the value of those?
The IT staff is going to run the website for free when it crashes every 10 seconds?
What's going to happen to the value of those endowments once the government starts taxing them and taking money out of them? Are people going to...
What's going to happen to the stock
market?
Pull
Their money? You know, what's going? It's just a terrible idea.
Because all these endowments are invested. So imagine just taking $1 trillion out of the U.S. stock market.
Let's move on to this next thing right quick.
But you know how many conservatives are going to praise this?
Oh yeah,
plan
totally for it. That was from that was from Charlie Kirk, ultra conservative Turning Point USA guy. The government weaponized, government's too big, we got to have smaller government, the founding fathers type of government, constitutional type government. Oh yeah, free, federally funded online university that the government's going to run. That's a great idea. These people have no principles whatsoever, and that's why we're in the mess that we're in right now. Speaking of people with no principles and
After
something
that, it just gives me no hope.
Totally ridiculous, Marjorie Taylor Greene. Now she's introducing this motion to censure Rashida Tlaib for being a Hamas terrorist sympathizer who wants to kill all of the Jews. And so she's trying to censure Rashida Tlaib. If you remember, a couple weeks ago, we had a day that was almost like January 6th when people broke into the Capitol grounds.
No, they were on the left, though.
They occupied the Cannon office building. And you know who's really upset about this is Marjorie Taylor Greene is upset about Rashida Tlaib inciting this violent occupation of a Capitol building through her words that she said leading up to this day. Yes, that's a real thing that's happening right now. So let's listen to her talking about some of this.
Should we indict Rashida Tlaib?
For incitement?
Yeah.
I don't know. She said peacefully and patriotically march over to the Cannon office building, you know, so I think she's free and clear.
Yeah.
Here's part of her speech.
Whereas Rashida Tlaib incited an illegal occupation of the United States Capitol complex on October 18th, 2023, which put members of Congress, their staffs, and Capitol visitors in danger by shutting down elevators, stairwells, and points of egress while obstructing official business in both the House of Representatives and the Senate, including a Senate Foreign Affairs Committee hearing. Whereas the illegal occupation incited by Rashida Tlaib was organized by Jewish Voice for Peace.
I get so annoyed by this because you have MTG up here wanting to censure someone for wanting to censure someone for inciting a Palestinian erection up there. And did she not write that down and say, this is going to look really weird when people are saying that I or Donald Trump helped incite the January 6th.
An intersex erection.
That happened.
Yeah.
You know, but I'm going to come up here and call for someone to be censured because of things. She lists out tweets going back years and quotes from speeches and says that she incited this insurrection at the Capitol building.
Yeah,
did that never click in her head?
They want to use the same tactics. That's the problem with going against principles. Like all you're doing is stooping down to their level, right? When by principle, they're all criminals. Like, pretty much.
By our principles, yeah. By the principles of morality and common decency.
Exactly.
Yeah, pretty much all.
Yeah. We could probably indict every single one of them if we had any, I was going to say balls, but can I say that on the radio? I just did.
Sure. Footballs. We watched football last weekend.
We did.
Yeah, but we didn't have any. There's one right there on the shelf, if that's what you're talking about.
Yeah, that's exactly
so we have
what I'm talking
We
about.
have one ball.
You're right.
Between the two of us. Okay, this thing happened. Some people did something yesterday, and it was an old Jewish man. I'll read this. This is from End Wokeness. Was murdered by a pro-Palestine activist. The medical examiner already ruled it the homicide. Here's what happened. There was a protest And there was also a protest. One side was like Free Palestine. One side was Jew. And the Palestine protester allegedly hit the old Jewish man with a megaphone, and he fell back.
A bullhorn.
A bullhorn, fell back, hit his head, and had a brain hemorrhage and died. That's sad. Okay, it's sad when that happens. I don't think there's video of the actual thing occurring. There is video immediately afterwards of the guy on the ground, and that's sad. He fell back, hit his head.
Still alive right there.
Alive at that point right there. Older man, had a brain hemorrhage.
God, he's bleeding a lot.
And died. Yeah, let's get off of that. Now, I'm being annoying today. I'm letting like if I had autism, I'm like letting it show through today because I'm finding it so impossible these days. Let me tell you a personal problem I have. I can't tweet anything or post anything on X because you just have to say the dumbest things with zero nuance, just completely binary. This is either this or this. There's never any room for nuance. You can't really have much of a conversation about anything. You've got to make these outlandish statements and just go with it and never have any nuance whatsoever. You see, right now,
just to get attention.
Yeah, to get attention, and that's how you go viral. And that's where I'm like, well, we're never gonna. I can't engage in the kind of things that I see people doing on Twitter because none of them make any sense to me. Like this post. One, I will admit that the way the media is talking about this is very hypocritical and has to do with what side pushed what side. For instance, CNN says man in California dies after suffering head injury at pro-Israeli and pro-Palestinian demonstrations. This is New York Times bottom left. Jewish man dies after altercation at dueling protests in California. Top right looks like NBC. Jewish man dies after hitting head in altercation at dueling pro-Israel and pro-Palestinian rallies. And then the next one looks like maybe a Fox News local thing. Jewish man dies from injuries suffered in Israel-Palestine rally in Westlake Village. Now, if this were reversed, you could play that game. Let's say the opposite thing happened. Let's say the Jew pushed the Palestinian and the Palestinian died afterwards. My guess is those headlines would be worded differently. It's very close to the SUV killing people in that parade, like that kind of thing.
Right.
As opposed to white man kills black people.
But again, this is the same principle, though. It's the same principle of like, why do you should not want the media coverage to pick sides like that anyway. So why do you want them to pick your side now?
Yeah.
Because it's been happening to you. And this is where I understand that people want to punch back. I get it. I really do. But at the same time, like, again, all you're doing is you're stooping down to their level that you don't even agree with, by the way. But you're going to act as if you do so that your side wins rather than do the right thing.
You take an example like George Floyd and Derek Chauvin. Now, what was decided was that was murder. And what you will see from many of these same more right-wing pages is, oh, that wasn't murder. People keep calling it murder. That was, he had drugs in his system, or that was involuntary manslaughter at best, or something
Standard
like
police
that.
protocol.
That's not what murder is. Yada, yada, yada. But then when it comes to this, I get it. Tragic. And I'm sure the guy hated the other dude probably because he was Jewish. And I'm sure he meant him harm by pushing him to the ground or by hitting him with the bullhorn. Was he trying to kill him when he hit him with the bullhorn, do you think? Now, did he know that it could cause bodily injury that could lead to death? That's a possibility, But is this an actual, like, oh, I'm mad at this guy, I'm going to murder him right now? Like, Is that really what everyone thinks happened?
I don't know. I wasn't the guy.
Don't know. We weren't there. Yeah. And from what I saw, and it is at least manslaughter.
I would say,
it's something like that. And
he caused bodily harm that led to death.
What I'm annoyed about is what Charlie just brought up, is that when it's the opposite, then the same people would be saying, oh, it's not a murder, that's an involuntary manslaughter, or that's an altercation or whatever. When it's flip-flops, they're like, oh, that's straight up murder, and the media is saying that it's not. There's when you live in this world with
it's
no
the same
principles.
people on the right who want to censor people on the left because the left is censoring them.
Yeah.
It's like, how about we don't censor it? How about fight for the right to not censor anybody?
And then I get a little bit more annoyed because this page, which is a massive page that posts out a lot of really good things, this end wokeness page, says the man was murdered by a pro-Palestine activist. The medical examiner already ruled it a homicide. Well, this person probably knows, and if they don't, then they should know that homicide does not mean murder. Homicide means that a person killed another person. By the way, if you defend yourself, if someone comes into your house and you are 100% in the right and you shoot them, that's a homicide. It's not a murder, but it's a homicide. Okay? That's what the medical examiner would rule it as. So those mean different things. And so when you say, oh, this was murder, the medical examiner already ruled it a homicide, that means nothing. It means nothing. Until the person gets arrested. From what I saw, there hasn't been an arrest made so far, but we'll see. And from what I heard, there's no video of the actual thing happening, so it's going to be tough. I doubt you're going to see some massive JLM protests out there burning down buildings or anything like that. But we'll see if people are going to be mad about this.
Well, typically because Jewish people have more sense than that.
Yeah. Okay, and then I've got the one person who you would never imagine, I'm going to say, offered up a nuanced explanation of a situation.
Barack Hussein
Obama. And I heard people tearing this apart. And when I listened to it, he's talking about Israel and Hamas and Palestine. When I listened to it, I was like, yeah, that's about right. This is complicated. Now, he speaks for a while.
Also, you've never heard of Pod Save America?
It's pretty big.
They got the freaking former president on there.
Pretty, in this clip.
They're woke left, but
he says a lot of things without saying anything in the most Obama way possible, so he can.
So this is Obama Harris.
Keep making money all the time, but
this is Kamala Obama.
This is just annoying thing that I have to show with him. Now, he's partially responsible for some. He was president for 8 years. Surely he's responsible for some things, and he talks about that. But I just had to give slight props to the fact that he said a couple things I agree with here. Maybe you'll disagree. I don't know.
There's any chance of us being able to act constructively to do something, it will require an admission of complexity and maintaining what on the surface may seem contradictory ideas, that what Hamas did was horrific, and there's no justification for it. And what is also true is that the occupation and what's happening to Palestinians is unbearable. And what is also true is that there is a history of the Jewish people that may be dismissed unless your grandparents or your great-grandparents or your uncle or your aunt tell you stories about the madness of anti-Semitism. And what is true is that there are people right now who are dying who have nothing to do with what Hamas did. And what is true, right? I mean, we can go on for a while. And the problem with the social media and trying to TikTok activism and trying to debate this on that is you can't speak the truth. You can pretend to speak the truth. You can speak one side of the truth. And in some cases, you can try to maintain your moral innocence, but that won't solve the problem. And so if you want to solve the problem, then you have to take in the whole truth. And you then have to admit nobody's hands are clean, that all of us are complicit to some degree. What could I have done during my presidency to move this forward as hard as I tried. I've got the scars to prove it.
Does he?
But there's a part of me that's still saying, well, was there something else I could have done? That's the conversation we should be having. Not just looking backwards, but looking forward. And that can't happen if we are confining ourselves to our outrage. I would rather see you out there talking to people, including people who you disagree with. If you genuinely want to change this, then you've got to figure out how to speak to somebody on the other side and listen to them and understand what they are talking about and not dismiss it. Because you can't save that child without their help. Not in this situation.
Thought that was great.
I thought it was pretty good.
It's really good.
I mean, I don't think I've ever played a clip of Obama saying something and then said it was good afterwards. So this is a kind of a weird moment in podcasting history for us.
Speaks the truth.
Yeah, I think he's right about the fact that you have to admit it's kind of what we've been saying. Maybe that's why I heard it and
multiple things can be true at the same time.
A lot of things that are true.
How weird.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
You know, Israel has done things that are wrong. Clearly, what Hamas did is wrong.
This is where it goes into theology for me, because it's this mantra that we have in our culture is religious. It's the if you're not with me, you're against me theme.
Mm-hmm.
Right? To be pro-Palestine is to be anti-Semitic.
Is it?
And to be pro-Jewish is to hate Muslims.
But is that real? Are you saying that?
I'm saying that's in our culture. That's what our culture says.
Saying that's our like binary.
Right. But it's not true.
Yeah. No,
it's not true. You can have disgust for the anti-Semitism, which, by the way, that's being perpetrated by the woke left, which is just so weird to me.
It's a lot.
A lot of it is, right? So you can have disgust for that because it absolutely is disgusting. People have been trying to exterminate the Jews since they started, I guess, or since God created them, or whatever you want to believe. And then also, like, you can also have empathy and sympathy for at least the innocent Palestinian children who deserve none of what Israel's doing to them.
Like, you have to be truthful about the fact that there are people dying who have nothing to do with this conflict whatsoever. Doesn't mean he's saying that there has to be a ceasefire. I'm sure he is saying stuff like that, but you have to at least be honest about that fact when you're talking about it. Like, there's people dying that have nothing to do with this. So what are you going to do? Also, what Hamas did was terrible. Also, Hamas wants to destroy Israel. Also, Israel has done a lot of bad things in the past. Also, maybe people had land taken away from them or not. But one thing he said that I think is important is that he said we have to look forward instead of backward. Nice politicians speak, stuff like that. But it goes back to something we said last week. The way I said that was, we don't have a time machine. We can't do anything about this. Israel exists. We're not going to go back and not create Israel through the UN, and maybe people push off their land or maybe not. I don't know. Timeline's fuzzy on that whole thing. We're not going to fix that part. What we have to figure out is, what are we going to do right now with this conflict? There's people dying on both sides, clearly. What's a way that we can actually move forward? Let's say it's destroying Hamas. What does that mean? How are they going to destroy Hamas? How do you even know who all the Hamas people are? How do you know there's not going to be? It appears
to me that Hezbollah is gearing up for
it looks like
joining.
That too.
So this, like we said, this is probably going to get worse before it gets better. But to your point, I mean, we do have to look for it. The only people speaking the truth about this are shows like this. That's it. The people that you listen to that are either all pro-Palestine or all pro-Israel are wrong.
That's
you
where you
have to be willing to take in all sides and stand up for human life, which is what's valuable.
And human life on all sides, not even just Palestinian human life, but then also people in Israel,
the ones you disagree with, maybe,
you know, who Hamas is definitely going to want to do more October 7th Jihad weekend again, or whatever they end up calling the thing. I don't know. Yeah. They haven't given it a cool name yet. Jihad weekend. I'm going to submit that one right now. But weekend of jihads.
You got a direct line to Hamas or something?
I don't know. We'll see. Maybe they're watching the show.
Also, to the live group's point, what I was talking about earlier is, it's very weird. The timeline's weird for me, even if you just look back to 2016, which is you had the woke left calling Trump a Nazi. and how we have to get rid of him because he's going to bring white supremacy, nationalist, Nazi sympathizing to America, authoritative leader. This guy is Hitler incarnate. Okay.
They were also very concerned about anti-Semitism on Twitter.
Yes.
Especially with Elon Musk taking over.
Those exact same people support the Nazis in Ukraine, like the literal Nazis that we've called out on the show. And then now they're in support of Hamas. So it's like
also Russia is helping to arm Hezbollah, and they hate Russia, but Russia's helping Hezbollah, who's fighting Israel. So they like Hezbollah, but they hate Russia because they're fighting their favorite Nazis in Ukraine.
Yeah, make it make sense. It doesn't. It doesn't. And this is all just. I think you brought up a good point a couple weeks ago when you said this all makes sense when you look at it through the, oppressor versus the oppressee lens.
That's all it is.
And what's happening is like, okay, who is the most victimized in this situation? And it doesn't matter if you have to turn into a Nazi to protect the victims. This is, and God,
it's the only thing that explains everything.
This goes back to what Jordan Peterson has been talking about for years. Yeah, the compassionate left. It's not compassion. What does he say? It's a mother's bare compassion that'll get you eaten.
True. All right, y'all. We will be talking about Israel and Hamas and doing Dumb Bleep of the Week coming right up.
So the protection of life, liberty, and property is what the Free State Project is all about. But it's an effort to move 20,000 people who understand.
It's about demonstrating to the entire country
that, we can have a free market, a truly free market.
Making it just a freer, great place to live.
It's the world's largest voluntarist libertarian community, and it's only getting bigger.
That's amazing, to be able to move to a place where other people passionately believe in being free and independent.
What the Free State Project is managing to do, though, is to put their money where their mouth is. It's physically getting up across the country and saying, let's go someplace and let's demonstrate the power of these ideas. There's a lot of kind of philosophy that surrounds liberty. There's a lot of thinking about it and talking about it. But here in New Hampshire, people are doing it.
101 Reasons Liberty Lives in New Hampshire, a documentary by Free State Project Early Movers. Watch it free at 101reasonsfilm.com. 101reasonsfilm.com.
My name is Jacob Hornberger. I'm president of the Future of Freedom Foundation, which Congressman Ron Paul awarded for having an outstanding freedom website. Write us at fff@fff.org, and we'll send you a free 3-month subscription to our monthly journal of libertarian essays and our booklet, Economic Liberty in the Constitution, which George Mason University economics professor Walter Williams praised in a recent column. That's fff@fff.org.
What if you want to hear the latest episode of Free Talk Live, but all you have is your phone, you forgot to download our archive, and you have no data connection? You can call our Listen line at 641-793-0191. That's a long-distance number, so you may incur charges. If not, listen as long as you want. 641-793-0191. The Free Talk Live Listen line, 641-793-0191.
The latest episode of Free Talk Live continues with Hour 2 up next after the news, here at listen.freetalklive.com.
From Feature Story News in Washington, I'm Benji Haya. Israel has marked 1 month since the October 7th terror attacks, a massacre by Hamas which left more than 1,400 people dead. In weeks past, Hamas says that more than 10,000 Palestinians have been killed in airstrikes in Gaza, where residents are bracing themselves for a full incursion into the territory. Already, Israeli troops are in the heart of Gaza City. Sarah Coates has been following developments from Tel Aviv.
Israeli forces have completely cut the north and the south of the Gaza Strip in half. Tanks, troops and other heavy artillery and machinery on the ground inside the coastal enclave. Now it comes as the families of hostages have held a vigil in Jerusalem at the Wailing Wall, calling on the Netanyahu government to do more to bring these 242 people home.
Russia has formally pulled out of a key post-Cold War security deal that limited conventional forces build-up near Europe's border. NATO countries have condemned the withdrawal from the treaty and suspended it following Moscow's move. Daria Bondarchuk reports from the Russian capital.
Russian Foreign Ministry said the Treaty on Conventional Armed Forces in Europe has expired as of Tuesday, announcing the exit. Moscow said NATO's expansion in recent decades has made the pact untenable. NATO countries condemned Russia's pullout and have, on their part, suspended the deal for as long as necessary. The United States said it would be unacceptable for it and its allies to remain bound by the treaty that Russia had ditched.
Millions of people in nearly 40 US states have been taken to the polls on Tuesday in elections that should offer a verdict on Joe Biden, a year out from the presidential vote. Americans are choosing governors in Kentucky and Mississippi, deciding legislative control in New Jersey and Virginia, and determining whether the Ohio state constitution should protect abortion rights. Elsewhere, Portugal's Prime Minister Antonio Costa has resigned after a police raid on his official residence. Authorities are investigating alleged corruption related to concessions for lithium mining and the production of hydrogen. Our Southern Europe correspondent Giles Gibson has the details.
In a televised statement that took Portugal by surprise, Antonio Costa said that he'd met with the president to hand in his resignation. He also said that his conscience is clear, but that, quotes, "The dignity of the functions of Prime Minister is not compatible with any suspicion about his integrity." Portuguese police have detained Costa's chief of staff and also named Infrastructure Minister João Galamba as a formal suspect as part of their investigation into alleged corruption at the top levels of government.
From bureaus worldwide, this is FSN.
With FSN Spotlight, I'm Simon Marks. Today and tomorrow, the latest from our old friend Matt Fry, presenter and correspondent for the UK's Channel 4 News. He is in Israel, covering the crisis over Gaza. Today, Matt's thoughts on why the United States is running into pushback from Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu over President Biden's calls for a humanitarian pause in Israel's assault on Gaza. Secretary of State Antony Blinken failed to make headway over the last few days.
Here he was in Tel Aviv, beseeching virtually the Israeli Prime Minister to stop some of the aerial bombardments and not have a ceasefire. That word is now, non grata here, but to have a humanitarian pause. And what did we see last night? The heaviest bombardment of the entire war. They seem to exist in two different spheres. Israel is very motivated and still very traumatized by the death of 1,400 civilians. But the Americans are traumatized by the idea that this Israeli response is far too heavy and will exert an incredibly heavy price politically and diplomatically, not just on the United States and the rest of the Arab world, all those rather brittle regimes of oil princes and monarchs who haven't been democratically elected, but also because, of course, Israel itself will be more isolated at the end of all this.
The political consequences of the war came home to President Biden literally over the weekend, with pro-Palestinian protesters encircling the White House and calling him Genocide Joe. With FSN Spotlight, I'm Simon Marks.
Our top stories again. Israel's marked 1 month since the October 7th terror attacks, a massacre by Hamas which left 1,400 people dead. Israeli troops are now in the heart of Gaza City. Russia's formally pulled out of a key post-Cold War security deal that limited conventional forces build-up near Europe's border. And Portugal's Prime Minister Antonio Costa has resigned after a police raid on his official residence. Authorities are investigating alleged corruption. That's the latest. Feature Story News, I'm Benji Haya in Washington.
Fossilized evidence reveals the Spazosaurus was the largest doofus ever to roam the Earth, and a new tandem mobility scooter is released. This is the Onion Week in Review, damn it, and we're going to need you to demonstrate a little decorum. Got it? This week, economists confirm that the booming tear gas industry continues to lead the world's economic recovery. Financial experts confirm that the growing demand for tear gas in countries like Turkey, Brazil, and Greece has increased over 20% annually over the past few years, and is anticipated to continue playing a major role in the world economy.
The market for tear gas just keeps sustaining itself and growing. We can only hope that more people demand tear gas in the coming months, and the recovery will be here sooner than we thought.
In other news, a community is devastated by the sight of an old man struggling up some steps. A stack of unused CDRs turns 5 years old, and this
Zoo is really promoting the hell out of their new fruit bat. Your diligence and patience have been noted. Prove yourself further at theonion.com.
This is the Onion News Network.
You can help spread the ideas of liberty with our Patreon for just $5 per month at amps.freetalklive.com. Free Talk Live.
Well, what's up, all of our liberty-loving friends? This is another fantastic episode of Liberty at Night with Nate and Charlie on the Free Talk Live Network, coming at you from Nashville, Tennessee. Make sure you find our daily podcast, Good Morning Liberty, where we talk about life, liberty, and the pursuit of meaning every single day of the week when we want to. We've been debating iPhones versus not iPhones for a solid 17 minutes or so before this show started. We've been debating. So why don't you let us know? Send us an email, charlie@goodmorningliberty.us. Which one is better?
And so far in the Fed Haters Club, we have more not iPhone users than iPhone users.
Well, how about that?
Yeah.
You know, those
Which
libertarians, they like to do their own thing, and a lot of times they're wrong. So, you know, what are you going to do?
Yeah.
Anyhow, we got to...
And they always talk about how there's more options for Android, whatever. Well, what about when your phone doesn't work? Like, it doesn't work like a phone.
I'm sure they figured out the whole getting your phone to work thing. You know, it's not just Apple that figured out how to make a phone work. But I don't know. I haven't tried one in a while.
Better.
Yeah, it's just way better. You never have to stress about things.
Yeah.
So
and when you pull up an app, you don't know if... You know, last night, someone was asking me, like, do you see a bunch of ads when you go to download an app from the App Store on iPhone? I was like, no. But like literally, she pulled up this app she was downloading and was like showing me in the Google Play Store how like you have to, like, you click install and then you have to watch an ad
for downloading the app.
Downloading an app. That's ridiculous.
Freaking Google.
Yeah.
You know. Jeez. Hey, here's a
that
reason.
Alone.
Here's a thing for libertarians.
That alone.
Apple is way better, seemingly, with privacy than a tyrannical Google-based phone is.
Mm-hmm.
Okay?
I don't even know how you let them have like that information.
Yeah. I don't even trust using it. They're like, oh, I don't use Google to search things. I use DuckDuckGo. You got a Google phone.
Everything is going through their servers.
Okay. Anyway, we'll continue this
There's
debate.
no way you're going to be part of the Boog.
No way.
Because they'll know.
Not with a Google phone.
Not with a Google. No.
No way. Only Apple people are going to be part of the Boog.
They pull everything off of that device. I can't believe you guys.
So there's stuff going on around the
Honestly,
world.
I don't think they should be part of the group anymore. They're probably giving information.
We just put people on a list. We're going to be able to get rid of these people pretty soon now. They just outed themselves.
Yeah.
Okay. We can't trust them anymore. Yeah. All right. We have to get to the content.
All the liberty information we talk about.
We actually have to get to the content.
They're just sending it off to Google, which you know is going straight to the Fed.
Yeah. Yeah.
And then we have feds that have infiltrated the Fed Haters Club.
Of course, that would be the first place they would go. They literally searched it. Of course, they would join the Fed Haters Club.
Yeah.
JoinGML.com, and we appreciate their minimum payment of $6 a month.
Yeah.
So, okay.
I feel like we should have a higher fee for Android users, though.
Charlie, Israel-Hamas war is still going on. Have you seen that in the news?
There's a war going on in our club.
There's a war going on the other side of the world that we're going to continue to be involved in. And saw some just disturbing things over the last couple of days that people are talking about, like Israel bombing a refugee camp. That's weird. Okay. That's kind of awkward, guys. I don't think we should bomb refugee camps, but apparently they were trying to kill a Hamas guy. So we got to weigh the pros and cons there.
Yeah. So take out the whole refugee camp.
We don't know how many people died at the camp, but people weren't mad enough about the first time. They didn't bomb the camp again because I guess
Did that really happen?
Yeah. Oh. Kind of crazy.
Is this confirmed, or is it kind of like the hospital bombing?
No, this is a real one. Israel said that they bombed it. And there was a clip going around of the dude on CNN talking to Wolf Blitzer, and Wolf Blitzer was kind of grilling him about it. Like, you knew that innocent people were there and you still bombed the refugee camp. And he said, yeah. And so,
wow.
Yeah. Cold-blooded.
That's not a good thing.
No, and I really worry, there's so many arguments going on about this conflict, and a lot of them, they're based upon whether or not you think Israel or Palestine should exist or not exist, or whether or not Israel's occupying this land, or who took the land from whose land was it at the beginning. And what I've decided on this is that we don't have a time machine, and we can't fix what happened in 1947 or in the 60s or all the different wars that have taken place. We can learn.
Or 2000 BC.
Yeah, any of those. We don't have a time machine.
Yeah.
Israel does exist, and I don't think they're just going to throw up their hands and move elsewhere and everything's going to be fine. So what we have to do is figure out what the best course forward is. And I don't know if the current course is the best one forward for them. We don't have to get into this whole thing that I wrote out, but I've even started to think about it from the standpoint that, like, I want Israel to exist. Okay, they've been there for a while. I'm not saying that they all need to move, but like, what would you do if you wanted Israel to do well and keep existing and not have to keep fighting these wars and all that? And I don't really think that what they're doing right now is going to help. And so instead of arguing about whether or not they should be there or shouldn't be there, whose land it is or anything, what I wish we could do is stop that part, because that part's really not going to change. And what I would like to see is for the people who want Israel to win this courageous battle to ask the question, is what they are doing right now actually the best thing for their future? Is it going to work?
Well, here's the other tough part, which is one of the problems you have between, like, let's say choosing sides is one group, Hamas, like, not only do they not want Israel to exist, but like they want to get rid of an entire group of people.
Yeah, from what I heard,
based on the fact that they're Jews.
I hear that they changed it. Now, I haven't actually confirmed. I was listening to someone yesterday. They said that they changed their charter. It no longer says Jews. It says Israel. And so that's who they want to be gone.
So you're saying if Israel,
Jews.
like if the Jews moved to another location, like, and set up a different Israel,
they're not going to try to kill those Jews.
They're not going to.
It's just Israel.
Yeah.
That is the problem. I don't know. I haven't read it. I haven't actually seen that. It's just something I heard yesterday.
Yeah.
So someone else can help us confirm that. If it's wrong, then it's wrong. And it's that person's fault, not mine. But I just wonder if they're going to be able to. They keep saying, well,
could we move Jerusalem to, like, Seattle, maybe?
You're going to have to talk to the Bible about that.
And then give
honestly
the Jews all of Washington State?
Possibly.
And maybe...
That could be fine.
Yeah. We'll move Jesus's tomb.
Mm-hmm. Could we move Antifa out of Portland and just put the Jews there instead?
We'll give them the whole state of Oregon.
I might back that one. Yeah. That could be fine. But they would even keep standards for high school students graduating.
Now, if we did that,
read and stuff.
If we did that, would Hamas come over to America and still try to kill? Well, would they come over to Israel?
Oh, which would be
inside of America,
FKA Portland, Oregon. Yeah,
exactly.
They might do that. So I've just been trying to think about what the best way forward is for them, and I don't think that doing kind of what we did after 9/11 is going to be the one that works. Like Netanyahu has said, well, you wouldn't have asked America after 9/11 to go with a ceasefire. You know, what did we do after 9/11? Well, the answer is what we did after 9/11 was wrong.
And didn't work.
It didn't work.
And we did it for 20 years.
So I don't really think that's the best example.
We're still doing it, and it's still not working.
We've been not working now on that for a long time.
Yeah.
And I don't know what they should have done after the whole October 7th thing. Like, let's just say history started on October 7th. You know, what should you do? I think it matters whether or not they care if people around the world are behind them and whether or not they want to win the public perception campaign around the world. Because I was thinking a lot about this, like, what does Hamas want? Probably the same thing that Osama bin Laden wanted, which was for us to come over there so they could kill even more of us. And we would also help them recruit more and more people by going over there and killing civilians and taking over occupying their land for a long time. You know, we helped their cause quite a bit when we went over there. And so I think Hamas and taking hostages and killing and doing what they did, and then running back, scurrying back over to their side, they wanted Israel to follow them and come over there and do exactly what they're doing right now. And look around the world, dude. I mean, look at the protests. Look at what's going on. Look at people cornering Jews on the streets and on college campuses and stuff. Hamas is winning this war. Israel
just
has
like Osama bin Laden dragged us over to the Middle East. That's exactly what he wanted us to do.
Like, in my opinion, Hamas has already won this war, even if all of the ones that are currently in Gaza are killed. Hamas has already won this war. The hatred for Israel is at a height that I've never seen in my lifetime. I've never seen this before, which, of course, we didn't have social media back when we were in high school and grade school, and so you couldn't see everything that people were thinking at all times, which was a great time to be alive. And now you can see all the protests and stuff taking place. It's easier to organize people to protest than it used to be with all of our new technology. But from what I can tell, as far as hatred around the world for Israel, it seems to be at all-time highs, and maybe even for Jews, which is wrong to categorize Jews with the state of Israel. Like those are different things, just like maybe Hamas and Palestinians are different things. You know, It's kind of weird that people that will argue that, like Hamas is not Palestine or not Palestinians, but like all Jews are Israel.
Yeah,
it's kind of weird too. So I don't know what they should have done after October 7th, but I think they had a real opportunity when everyone was behind them and everyone felt bad for them and everyone was talking about the rape and murder and baking babies in the oven and things like that. They had an opportunity to show the world that they were the morally superior people. And I think they, regardless of whether or not you think they should retaliate, I think in killing so many civilians now, which the numbers, if you believe all the numbers, are up to like 9,000 or so, something like that. I think they've already lost that morally superior war in the image of people around the world. And sometimes being the bigger person in a conflict and saying you might have come over here and killed 1,500 of our civilians in a terrible way, but we're better than you. We're not like you. Like, we're going to hunt down each one of you people that did this, and we're going to send in special forces, and we're going to kill you over the next little bit, but we're not just going to bomb people's apartment buildings and kill innocent civilians, because that would make us as cold and heartless as you are. And that's not who we are. That's who you are.
Yeah.
They failed that.
Yeah.
It's done. It's over.
Yeah. Imagine the cops in the United States, like they're going after a murderer, and he decides to hide in the hospital.
Yeah.
And rather than go in and try to get him out, we just bomb the hospital.
Yeah, we don't do that.
We got to take out that one murderer.
We talked about our hostage scenario. Like, you don't do that. You do you spend look at even Waco. They spent like 80 days or some kind of crazy number that they spent at Waco before they finally decided to kill everyone inside the building. But at least they thought about it for a while, Yeah. And in this case, that's not what's happening. But okay.
Well, and so here's where the line gets fuzzy. Okay. And this is like, I can break this down to my own life, and where is the wisdom? It's finding the wisdom to discern the difference between standing up for yourself and giving grace and not being walked all over. Right.
Yeah.
Because if a snake, whatever, you can come up with all kinds of analogies or whatever, but like if a snake bites you, you're gonna pet the snake, be like, hey buddy, don't bite me again, like, are you creating incentives for them to keep sending paragliders over if you don't do anything about it?
That's definitely a problem.
Okay. But then at the same time, if you look throughout history, what has actually invoked like actual peace and change? I always go back like to Martin Luther King Jr. During the civil rights movement. I mean, how justified would several of those people have been to fight back against folks who were beating them, killing some of them, imprisoning them? Like the anger and rage that you would feel, but yet consistently Martin Luther King Jr. and those that followed him chose love and grace and mercy And it actually changed.
Now,
it actually invoked real change.
One difference I see here is that I'm not really arguing that, say, doing nothing or just being more targeted would have changed the opinions of all the people in Gaza or Hamas terrorists or whatever. I think that they have a religious, philosophical belief. And then the people there, you're still dealing with whether or not they think Israel stole their land. And so Israel existing is like an act of aggression on them because they believe that the land was stolen. And so even Israel not doing anything, well, if they don't leave the land, then they're still like aggressing on you the whole time. What I said when we first started was if they wanted to win in the eyes of the world and have the world behind them, and maybe even not be creating more people around the world that will eventually join the terrorist pipeline to wanting to do bad things, then they could have not come out here and killed all of these civilians. They could have done it in a more tactical way. And I know that's really difficult to do because you don't want to incentivize them to just do it again. Like, oh, wait, we attacked them. We killed 1,500 people and they didn't do anything. Let's do it. You guys good next Saturday? You good? Yeah. You want to get together again? Get the band back together? I think what they could focus on is doing better at defense, actual defense. You know, the people are inside your borders and you defend yourselves, you kill those people and you run them back out. Like that's national defense. And they could have their military stationed everywhere along their border if they're worried about more border incursions. They kind of left it up from what I heard to these advanced technologies.
T-Dub makes a good point. They could let their citizens be armed to protect themselves.
And then up their Iron Dome capabilities to the point that no rocket ever gets through, to the point that Hamas even decides that there's no reason to fire another rocket. We haven't had a rocket land in Israel since '07. You know, why are we still firing rockets at these guys? They just shoot every single one of them down. Maybe we should use those pipes for water instead, something like that. And because they literally would take humanitarian aid pipelines that were sent to them and they would cut them up and make them in the rockets, you know. Mm-hmm. And, you know, so you improve your defense capabilities so much that you make it impossible for anyone to penetrate your borders and come in and attack you. And then you don't aggress on any of them. You're not bombing them. And you're so heavily well defended that none of your people are getting killed either. And to me, that sets a better stage for going forward more peacefully into the future.
And then you're able to tell better story, that you have the better story, right? Yeah. And then as generations come along, like that hate starts to die out because you're replacing it with something that actually drives out hate, which is love.
I get in all kinds of conspiracy theories like, how did they not know this attack was going to happen? You know, after that hospital bombing, they released this supposed audio conversation between two Hamas people talking on the phone, like, oh yeah, the cemetery from behind the hospital. They had that within like hours of the hospital bombing. Where are the audio recordings of people talking about meeting and getting together on October 7th and coming through paragliding? They don't have any phone conversations of people talking about this?
They had no idea this is going to happen?
After each bombing that happens, they submit these audio recordings and they got nothing from before October 7th at all. Where did they get these? That's kind of weird, right? Just saying, it seems kind of weird.
Was Hamas using an Enigma? Maybe?
Maybe. And they
a Middle Eastern Enigma? It's a new one.
It'll probably be the same old Enigma. They just didn't know how to break it anymore, I guess. I don't know. Anyway, these questions lead me to ideas about this war. So we're talking about giving them $14.3 billion, and that's going to happen one way or another. We're going to give them money. All right. And what has really started to bother me about this is, well, first off, it's money that is stolen from us, and then we're just going to give it to other people. And then some of that is going to be used to kill innocent civilians.
And then we don't even have any money.
And then I wish people on the left who are so upset would realize that this is some of the problem with your money being forcefully stolen from you, that this tax apparatus and this IRS apparatus that you so fully support then takes your money and gives it to a country that's perpetrating this war that you're out there protesting against right now.
Yeah.
That seems like something that people should pay attention to.
But you want the rich people to pay their fair share towards this war.
Towards the war. So we can give more money towards the war.
Yeah.
But when you look at the differences between our two countries, like look at government debt. This is one that is weird. Israel's government debt to GDP is 60%, and ours is 122% as of 2022. I have more updated numbers, by the way, but the percentages were around the same. Their yearly budget balance was minus 3% of their GDP. Ours is minus 5.5% of the GDP in 2022. That'll be going up for 2023. By all accounts, Israel is in a better financial condition, like with current money, than we are. Everything that we do is with debt, and we finance it with bonds, and we have to borrow this money and pay it back. And somehow that means that we just have to be able to continue borrowing money from people to give it to this country that has half the debt to GDP ratio that we have, and has a less of a budget deficit before this war started than what we have on a percentage basis. Our economy is way bigger, so they have a way, way smaller when you look at the actual number amount. And then we're giving them $4 billion and change dollars, every year. And I just wonder how who circles that square for you in your head? That's what I want to know. Who makes that make sense? Here's a line graph of the two. Here's ours. Actually, now debt to GDP is up at 129%, and theirs is at 60.9%. And we are the ones that should be taking out debt to give them money. Why aren't they taking out debt to do this?
Well, according to Janet Yellen, we can afford it.
Yeah.
They may not be able to afford it.
I guess not. And then I started looking at some of the money that we give them, because I started thinking about this idea of why aren't they financing this war with debt or with something like war bonds, like how we used to finance, like how we financed World War II, And you look at this $3.3 billion that we gave them from the DOD, and this is from 2022, and this is a military financing program that we gave them $3.3 billion, which is a financing program with loans and grants. And then it says payment waived. They don't owe us the money back. And so what I wonder is, Israel, what's it worth to you to stay alive? And why is it that we should just borrow this money from the American people, take it from the American people, and why don't they have to pay it back? Yeah. They're in such better financial condition as an economy than we even are, debt-wise. Why is there no question as to whether or not they have to pay the money back when they get done? Isn't that worth it to you?
We're up to over $250,000 per taxpayer.
Yeah.
So each taxpayer owes over $250,000. Mm-hmm. And that money's going to come due at some point. It may not be in our lifetimes. I don't know, because the market can remain irrational longer than you can remain solvent.
Coming up, we're going to keep talking about this, and then we're going to talk about this ballot referendum in Maine, where they want to seize the means of power distribution, supported by Bernie Sanders. Coming right up.
If you're looking for work, the person you are applying to is probably so swamped with applicants that he or she is tough to reach. So call early in the day, before 8 a.m., before the palace guards arrive. You'll need your prospect's direct number, and here's a sneaky way to get it. Suppose the company's main number is 555-5000. You should call 555-5012. When someone says, "Good morning, Pam Johnson," you should innocently say, "Oops, somebody here must have written this down wrong. I was calling for Tom Frederick. What's his direct number?" If the very next thing you hear isn't Pam giving you Tom's number, it may be, "Good morning, Tom Frederick." For more tips for job seekers and getting better results in all your day-to-day communication, hit survivalspeech.com. I'm Holland Cook.
From Feature Story News in Washington, I'm Benji Haya. Israel has marked 1 month since the October 7th terror attacks, a massacre by Hamas which left more than 1,400 people dead. In weeks past, Hamas says that more than 10,000 Palestinians have been killed in airstrikes in Gaza, where residents are bracing themselves for a full incursion into the territory. Already, Israeli troops are in the heart of Gaza City. Sarah Coates has been following developments from Tel Aviv.
Israeli forces have completely cut the north and the south of the Gaza Strip in half. Tanks, troops and other heavy artillery and machinery on the ground inside the coastal enclave. Now it comes as the families of hostages have held a vigil in Jerusalem at the Wailing Wall, calling on the Netanyahu government to do more to bring these 242 people home.
Russia has formally pulled out of a key post-Cold War security deal that limited conventional forces build-up near Europe's border. NATO countries have condemned the withdrawal from the treaty and suspended it following Moscow's move. Daria Bondarchuk reports from the Russian capital.
Russian Foreign Ministry said the Treaty on Conventional Armed Forces in Europe has expired as of Tuesday, announcing the exit. Moscow said NATO's expansion in recent decades has made the pact untenable. NATO countries condemned Russia's pullout and have, on their part, suspended the deal for as long as necessary. The United States said it would be unacceptable for it and its allies to remain bound by the treaty that Russia had ditched.
Millions of people in nearly 40 US states have been taken to the polls on Tuesday in elections that should offer a verdict on Joe Biden, a year out from the presidential vote. Americans are choosing governors in Kentucky and Mississippi, deciding legislative control in New Jersey and Virginia, and determining whether the Ohio state constitution should protect abortion rights. Elsewhere, Portugal's Prime Minister Antonio Costa has resigned after a police raid on his official residence. Authorities are investigating alleged corruption related to concessions for lithium mining and the production of hydrogen. Our Southern Europe correspondent Giles Gibson has the details.
In a televised statement that took Portugal by surprise, Antonio Costa said that he'd met with the president to hand in his resignation. He also said that his conscience is clear, but that, quotes, "The dignity of the functions of Prime Minister is not compatible with any suspicion about his integrity." Portuguese police have detained Costa's chief of staff and also named Infrastructure Minister João Galamba as a formal suspect as part of their investigation into alleged corruption at the top levels of government.
From bureaus worldwide, this is FSN.
Yep, we still do email. Drop your email address in the entry box at freetalklive.com and you'll be kept in the loop with Free Talk Live.
All right, y'all, what's up? This is Liberty at Night with Nate and Charlie on the Free Talk Live network. Before that break, we were talking about how Israel could actually fund this war with bonds like we used to do in the old days. People are buying Israeli bonds. Sorry, I cut you off.
Well, I'm just saying, like, all I'm saying is who knows when that debt's going to come due, but it's going to come due. Mm-hmm. It's just the way it works throughout all of human history.
Indiana is purchasing $35 million of Israeli bonds. They do have bonds. Okay, so they do have a bond market, just like most countries do, and they offer a pretty good percentage on the bonds. Overall, U.S. states have combined together to buy about $150 million worth of Israeli bonds for their state, like pension programs and stuff like that. And so it got me thinking, like, what about this as an investment? We could just give them the money, or we could we could buy a bond from them and they could pay us back in 30 years with a 5% interest rate or something. Why can't they afford to do that? I wonder why. There's a story about the Israeli bonds, them saying it's a good deal. I looked at their bond market. They're doing about 5%, 5 to 6%, 15-year bonds, 6% right now. You can get a Jubilee bond. 15-year bond at 6.04%. And so why is it that we didn't take American taxpayers' money and just give it to them and say that they don't have to do anything back with it? You've got state pension programs that are buying Israeli bonds to help them fund their war effort. So we got states buying Israeli bonds in show of support. Ukraine was selling war bonds. They sold like $180 million worth or something like that. The bonds at 11% interest. You know why they got to pay a higher interest rate? because there's a lot higher risk involved, because good chance they're not going to win that war. So good chance you're not going to get, I don't know if Russia gets the debt in the process. When you do a hostile takeover of a country, I'm not sure if you also get all of their debt.
Okay, I'm giving you money and you're literally blowing it up. Like actually blowing it up.
During World War II, the U.S. spent nearly 4 years at war, requiring services of millions of soldiers and the manufacturing of countless ships, aircraft carriers, tanks, weapons, all the stuff. Cost estimated to be around $4.1 trillion if adjusted for today's dollars. Well, we could have paid for the whole war in like 9 months.
Yeah.
The U.S. needed to raise funds quickly and did so largely by selling war bonds. The government urged citizens to purchase these war bonds as a matter of patriotic duty, and more than 85 million Americans bought war bonds. Americans purchased $185.7 billion worth of war bonds. By contrast, more recent wars, including conflicts in Iraq and Afghanistan, were primarily financed by increasing the nation's foreign debt because we could just print all the money. See, even back in World War II, even though they already had the Fed at that time, we still had the gold standard technically at that point. And so we were still a little more constrained. They had to sell these bonds to raise money. So it wasn't until the 70s we got officially taken off. They did, forcefully bought everyone's gold.
Yeah.
But our money supply was still constrained at that point. So anyway, I guess to round this up, what I want to figure out is, why is it that when we talk about this $14.3 billion aid package for Israel, or even the $4 billion that we do every year, why isn't it worth it to them to want to pay a 5% interest rate on this and make it a 15-year bond or a 30-year bond or whatever? It would be better for the American people than the foreign aid package that we're talking about. Even if there was 0% interest and they still paid it back. You didn't have to charge them any money on it.
Just give us the money back.
Just give the money back to us later on down the road. But you could actually make the case that, okay, this could be a better investment of taxpayer money than other ways the U.S. government was going to set the money on fire. For some reason, there's just this idea that they're in such dire need that we have to give this to them, no questions asked. I don't like that. There's other ways.
That was good.
Good.
Great conversation.
The next one, which hopefully we have some time for, totally shifting topics right now. But I wanted to talk about this ballot referendum in Maine. They're going to be voting. Just one of those.
Still money talk.
Still money. Pure democracy, where they put these ballot referendums on, and you get 50.1% of the people decide to do something, and that's that. That's the law, unless someone challenges it later on. But Maine public power vote could shape new course for utilities. So what's happening is they've got these two utility companies in Maine, and they are they're state regulated companies.
Yeah, but they're for-profit.
They're for-profit companies.
This is evil.
They're privately owned companies, but they are heavily regulated companies. So they are like state-sanctioned monopolies in the state. The state, even, they have to get their rate.
And we know Maine exists because there was a mass shooting.
A shooting.
Yeah.
Before that, I wasn't sure.
Yeah. So now, there are people.
So now we have two stories that are proving, I guess, that Maine does exist and that people live there.
Yeah. It seems as if people do live. I don't know why.
I'm sure it's beautiful up there.
But it seems like people do live in Maine.
You get it closer to the lobster.
Yeah.
It's cheaper up there. You don't have to pay shipping costs.
Yeah.
So, Charlie, you want to read a little bit? I'll read a little bit.
Yeah.
See what's going on here.
So Maine residents are set to vote next week on a ballot initiative that would make the state the first with a publicly owned electric utility governed by an elected board. Proponents say the initiative could chart a new path forward for utilities, increasing local control of something that profoundly affects people's lives and reducing service interruptions in Maine. Yeah, because they have an incentive. Not to. Which leads the nation in frequency of power outages. Detractors, meanwhile, say it would be prohibitively expensive. The ballot initiative, question 3, would allow for a new, quote, a new power company governed by an elected board to acquire and operate existing for-profit electricity transmission and distribution facilities in Maine. Maine's electricity is provided by two investor-owned utilities, Central Maine Power and Versant Power. The push for a public utility was fueled by frustration with those two utilities, which cover 97% of Mainers, said Lucy Hoscharter, Hoschenscharter. She's a sharter.
Hush Schartner.
A spokesperson for the campaign.
Anyway, the important part was you say a Hush Schartner.
Yeah,
that's what you need to take away from that.
She goes by Lucy.
Lucy is her name. So the idea here is that they are going to forcefully buy out the privately owned companies that are currently providing the power in Maine and create a publicly customer owned power company that is going to magically have less power disruptions than the current companies, will save the people money. Everything will be cheaper because you're going to knock out that pesky profit, which is, as everyone has been, it's so important for us to talk about these things because people will do this based on the idea that profit increases the price of things, when in fact profit decreases the price of things because it creates an incentive to do things more efficiently.
If you have competition. Power is a difficult. Utilities are a difficult thing, like do you really want to see 20 different electrical pole lines running side by side down the side of the road with sales reps coming by your door deciding which power company you're going to sign up for?
It's like it's difficult.
And then you switch every month. I want to tap into Versant this month,
So yeah, it is. It's more difficult than other businesses.
Now all the communities they're building, they put the power underground. It's much better.
Much better.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. My community, no, it's up there.
Is it still up there? Oh,
terrible.
That's frustrating.
Yeah, I live in Antioch.
Yeah,
so power lines. Ours have like.
Is it weird when you drive into this? Extremely.
Yeah, I'm like, where are the power lines with shoes hanging from them?
Yeah,
this is weird.
Yeah.
Okay, sorry, there's more here. The idea of
the whole point of that, I live in this unbelievably wealthy neighborhood.
Oh yeah.
It's Durham, one of Bart Durham's sons lives here.
Okay.
Japheth. Yeah.
Okay.
Lives in this community.
It's too bad you don't have John Morgan from Morgan and Morgan and Morgan and Morgan.
Yeah.
Living here.
Some of the billionaire lawyers' kids. Yeah, that's how
rich Charlie is.
The idea this podcast is.
The idea of moving toward public ownership of electric utilities is already being explored elsewhere, although at a municipal rather than statewide level. Rochester, New York City Council voted in June to study the logistics of a public power campaign.
An exploratory committee.
Do you think that the power company has to create a committee to study the logistics of whether or not they can provide power to people? Like, no, because they're experts in their field.
Yeah.
In this case, the government has to get together and figure out how the heck they're going to do this. While San Diego committed up to $3 million for the same purpose in 2022, these investor-owned models aren't working anywhere in the country, Lucy said. At its heart, this is about whether, as we are setting up this public good, electricity, do we want that crucial system to be in the hands of corporations whose job it is to extract as much money as possible? I think that has an appeal across the country. This is literally people voting on a ballot referendum to seize the means of power production from privately owned companies that are currently operating in the state. Like, they're going to forcefully buy them out.
Yeah.
And take over their operations.
That's insane.
And it's happening in a U.S. state.
Yeah. And this is why we talk about these ideas all the time.
Yeah. 2 senators from Maine, Angus King and Susan Collins, have stayed out of the fight, with King's office telling, probably because he gets donations from the power companies, King's office telling The Hill he considers it a state issue. But Senator Bernie Sanders, perhaps the New England figure with the highest national profile, has backed this referendum, if you can imagine that thing. Quote, this is from someone else.
This is from Bernie.
Is it from Bernie? Power belongs in the hands of the people, not greedy corporations.
Belongs?
Fortunately, Mainers have a rare chance to take control of an important part of their daily lives. Instead of a private power system that last year sent $187 million in profits out of the country, they're owned by non-U.S. companies, by the way. Mainers can have cheaper, more reliable power, and help fight climate change at the same time.
Had to throw that in there.
No, this is why it's happening. That's the next thing you'll figure out. These companies have apparently been too slow to adopt clean energy technology, and so the push is to take them over and force them over to green stuff. Proponents of public utilities ownership have argued that investor-owned utilities frequently end up in scenarios in which they must choose between profit and addressing climate change, and opt for the former, the profit. The incentive structure for private utilities was designed to encourage them to build as much infrastructure as possible.
What a terrible thing.
Oh, God.
We need to get as much power to as many houses as possible. Stop! What about climate change?
This is terrible.
Skip the houses. We're all going to die from climate change.
That was from Amber Ruther, an organizing coordinator with the Alliance for a Green Economy, who, when she said that, was testifying in her capacity as a member of New York City's Democratic Socialists for America. But now that incentive structure is obsolete and it's preventing us from achieving our climate goals.
That's what I just said. Stop. Stop giving power to people. We must fight climate change first. And I'm sorry, Susan and Timmy, local lobster farmers, obviously, who live in Maine, you know?
Yeah.
You know, your house does not get power right now until we fix this whole climate change issue in Maine.
You've got like socialism coming in the form, and I mean like seizing the means of production, coming in the form of this ballot vote because of the climate change agenda people are pushing to take over these companies.
Yeah.
I'm not saying these companies
and we're the crazy
great.
ones who have been talking about these types of things for the last, 5 years. And then when it starts to come true, because it's you can see the writing on all over the walls in Maine. If you go Maine, there's so much writing.
There's walls, and you're saying that there's writing all over them.
If you look at the walls carefully,
people in Maine have backed us up on it. They've been seeing the writing on the walls for a while.
Yeah, so many walls with writing on them.
Opponents,
big cursive letters too.
Yeah,
and I know some people can't read cursive, which might be the problem. Yeah. Bring back cursive. And this is why we need to bring back cursive in schools.
Because people can't read the writing on the walls.
Your mom was onto something there. Why do people listen to the show?
I don't know. I have no clue. Anyway, back to the point.
The point I was trying to make was about walls. All right.
Yeah.
No, but the point is we talk about these things for a reason. And it's because of stuff like this. Now, just wait until you see how well this is going to work, folks.
Opponents, meanwhile, argue that if ratepayers are concerned about cost, shifting to public utility ownership would be a move in the wrong direction.
Correct.
Willie Rich, because name something the government does that they are able to do cheaper than a private corporation. Okay.
Exactly.
Willie Rich, or Rich, as we're going to call him.
You know what the worst hospital is in Nashville?
Probably the General.
It's Nash General. It's the municipal hospital.
That's because they're underfunded.
That is nonprofit. They don't take a profit. It used to be a good hospital back in like the 70s and 80s. It was like the number one hospital.
Yeah. Well, we've slashed our hospital budget since then. We just need to send them more money. Willie Rich, executive director of Maine Affordable Energy, told The Hill the three main marks against the idea are its cost, the years of legal red tape involved in implementing it, and the prospect of a new system of bureaucracy with no experience running an electrical grid. These are going to be, imagine, the idea here is that you can elect the people that are going to be doing this. Who are you going to elect? Like, you want your board of people running the power company to be decided based on their ability to get out the vote? Not on their credentials of running an electrical company?
Understanding power?
Quote, if you waved a magic wand and made all those problems disappear except for the cost would still be insurmountable, Rich said. To start with, in order to transition to a publicly owned utility, the state would have to buy out the existing utilities. Maine Affordable Energy estimates this would cost about $13.5 billion, while proponents of the initiative estimate the cost at around $5 billion. This is where the court battle is going to come up, because if they try to come in and buy them for $5 billion, they're going to sue them. Because when you do a civil asset for it, what do you call it when you...
eminent domain.
Eminent domain, yeah.
Mm-hmm.
When you eminent domain someone and you seize this business, you're supposed to pay them a fair market value. The problem is, when do you check to see what the fair market value is? Because before they decided to do this, the value might have been $13.5 billion. After they decided to do this, how many companies do you think are lined up to buy out these power companies right now? The value goes down because where's the market for people wanting to come in and buy them? It's gone. There's less people that would be interested in coming and buying them now. So their market value has gone down since they started talking about doing this. And so they're going to argue that their value is the value of the company before anyone started talking about doing this, and that the fair value would be $13.5 billion. So that's, if they buy it for $13.5 billion, that's $500 million a year in interest payments. Now, the really fun part about that is that Bernie Sanders just said that these companies sent off $187 million in profits to other countries. And of course, the idea now is that we're going to get rid of these profits. To buy out these companies, the state will pay just in interest $500 million per year, 2.5 times the profit of the current investor-owned utilities. Yet they will save money because they won't have to be paying for those companies' profit.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
So not only will they have to...
Well, math is racist, so even if you try to crunch the numbers, you can't because you're white.
I don't know why I thought that was so funny.
But
Eminem's domain.
Yeah.
I don't know why mm-hmm. And so they not only will they have
Are
to...
you saying you want to bring Chuck Shady back?
They'll have to cut costs to a point that they make up for this $500 million a year. They're not just going to have to save like what people were paying for the profits of the corporations. They've now got to save the $500 million a year that they're going to be paying in interest just to get it back to even.
But here's what I want to say. This is stupid. But and this could make dumb bleep of the week.
Yeah.
Honestly.
Yeah.
But here's the thing. We talk all the time about how basically we have 50 separate countries. I want Maine to do this.
Oh, I do too.
Please.
Yeah.
For the love of God.
Do it.
Pass this.
I want to see it happen.
I get out the yes vote.
Yeah.
Please. Let's run this experiment live.
In Maine.
And for those that live in Maine, please move out because we want you to actually have power. That's cost effective.
Mm-hmm.
But for everyone who's dumb enough that actually wants this, y'all stay there. And let's run this experiment in Maine. And I mean, what an incentive to get people to move there.
Mm-hmm.
You know, let's send all the communists that live in America. Let's send them to Maine. They can set up their little Maine community and we'll see what works out. We'll see how it plays out. Maybe we would be wrong. Maybe a public utility, maybe the worker owned, customer owned, board owned, whatever, people who know nothing about power, maybe they would do a way better job and we just don't know. And then they can just start to take over everything else, you know?
Mm-hmm. Let's do it.
It'll be, you know, employee owned McDonald's and gas stations and everything in Maine. Let's just make it the communist utopia that they're all dreaming of. Let's make Maine. I think Maine would be a great state to try this out.
Yes.
Yeah.
Almost furthest away possible.
Let's do it. I'm campaigning yes.
Yeah, I do want to see this. No offense to people that in Maine that allegedly exist that are listening right now, but I do want to see this happen, and I want to see how terribly it goes because it will provide us with something to talk about on the show. Finally. Of course, people will say that wasn't real socialism, but they'll have all different ways that they'll be blaming this.
Really buying out a profit.
Somewhere there's going to be corporate greed that's going to mess up their master plan of everything, or they're going to put the wrong person in power that's going to be corrupt and it's going to be stealing money. And if you just would have the right people,
I'm filling in. Is this mail-in ballot eligible? I'm
sure we can just send in ballots.
I'm filling it out right now. Can we vote online?
Here's the fun part.
I'll be from Maine.
Most of the people's the last part before we go, because we have to go. Most of the people's bills are from the actual power generation, and these companies, the ones they're talking about taking over, they only handle the distribution of the power, not the power generation. They still get that from like Ontario or something. I don't know where they get where they're getting their actual power from. So that part's going to stay the same. They have a lot of natural gas and stuff like that. That's still going to be dictated by market prices by doing that. This doesn't even affect that. It's only about they think they can do the power distribution so much cheaper than these companies. But what's great is when this worker cooperative or customer cooperative comes in, they are then going to hire a third-party operator to run the company still afterwards. All that's happening is they're replacing these two companies' boards of directors with elected boards of directors for the two companies, and then they're still going to have to pay a third-party company to run it because none of them have any idea what they're doing at all.
Great experiment.
And the idea that they're going to be able to do it cheaper than people who do this for a living for their whole lives is completely ridiculous.
I already feel bad for the people who are going to freeze to death in Maine when this passes, because it gets cold up there from what I hear.
I'm sure.
It's pretty close to Greenland, I think, right?
Like Costco just said, the third party is going to be people from the original companies. They're literally going to take over the board of directors and then pay the companies to run the companies like they used to run the companies. That's exactly what's going to happen because they're already going to know what to do because they're the ones that are doing it right now. Yeah. They're just supplanting their board of directors. That's it.
And paying them a bit.
And they're going to pay $13.5 billion for it and $500 million a year in interest to remove the board of directors.
And somehow, people of Maine, your cost is going to go down. You're going to be paying less.
Because you're getting rid of the profit.
But the problem is the real reason you're going to be paying less is because you're actually not going to be able to get power to your house anymore.
Yes, it won't cost anything.
So it's not going to cost you a thing.
Sure, it will be cheaper.
Yeah, it will be cheaper. Well, you might freeze to death, but that's fine. If you die, then you're not paying anything. You're dead. I see how they're going to save money.
Just like food was cheaper for the starving people in China. Coming right up, it's everyone's favorite segment of the week. It's Dumb Bleep of the Week. Time to vote on the dumbest thing that was said in politics last week on Liberty at Night.
Free Talk Live.
If I was freezing to death in the car with the keys on the floor, I'd still been charged in New York. In any case, so what happened with me was, they threatened me with 4.5 years in a state prison, and this is what led me to the ideas of liberty. That I say, this is crazy. I didn't hurt anybody. What's going through my head is this can't happen. I have to stop them. I should just go out blasting.
Thanks for not doing it, by the way.
Yeah, I mean, I
like hanging out with you.
It's going swimmingly. So this whole living thing. There's a lot to it. But when I got involved with the Libertarian Party, I was kind of looking, the idea was I was looking for something to die for, frankly, and I found something to live for. As I'm going forward, I'm finding things that I can do instead of getting myself killed. And this is, the gist of the story of how the Libertarian Party saved my life, that this was my introduction to all of these things.
Interesting.
Free Talk Live, 7 nights a week from 7 to 10 Eastern at freetalklive.com.
There are basically two types of advertising, direct response and branding. Radio's great for direct response with its low cost to listener ratio, but audio can't be beat for branding, which is a longer term endeavor. You want to be the first thing that someone thinks of when they think about your product or service. If you have a local business that you want kept top of mind in your community, call the station. If you need national reach, Free Talk Live's got around 200 radio stations, millions of monthly listening sessions, can suit all budgets, and if we don't think we're right for you, we'll tell you. Email me, mark@freetalklive.com.
Tired of cancel culture? Sick of mega tech corporations holding an axe over your head? Join the LRN.FM Matrix chat server. It's self-hosted, so no one else can tell us what to do or say. Don't like the existing channels? You can make your own. You can even connect into some of our channels from other Matrix servers. It's federated. For the full LRN.FM Matrix experience, though, you should join our server via the step-by-step instructions at chat.lrn.fm. Chat.lrn.fm.
The latest episode of Free Talk Live continues with Hour 3 up next after the news here at listen.freetalklive.com.
From Feature Story News in Washington, I'm Benji Haya. Israel has marked 1 month since the October 7th terror attacks, a massacre by Hamas which left more than 1,400 people dead. In weeks past, Hamas says that more than 10,000 Palestinians have been killed in airstrikes in Gaza, where residents are bracing themselves for a full incursion into the territory. Already, Israeli troops are in the heart of Gaza City. Sarah Coates has been following developments from Tel Aviv.
Israeli forces have completely cut the north and the south of the Gaza Strip in half. Tanks, troops and other heavy artillery and machinery on the ground inside the coastal enclave. Now it comes as the families of hostages have held a vigil in Jerusalem at the Wailing Wall, calling on the Netanyahu government to do more to bring these 242 people home.
Russia has formally pulled out of a key post-Cold War security deal that limited conventional forces build-up near Europe's border. NATO countries have condemned the withdrawal from the treaty and suspended it following Moscow's move. Daria Bondarchuk reports from the Russian capital.
Russian Foreign Ministry said the Treaty on Conventional Armed Forces in Europe has expired as of Tuesday, announcing the exit. Moscow said NATO's expansion in recent decades has made the pact untenable. NATO countries condemned Russia's pullout and have, on their part, suspended the deal for as long as necessary. The United States said it would be unacceptable for it and its allies to remain bound by the treaty that Russia had ditched.
Millions of people in nearly 40 US states have been taken to the polls on Tuesday in elections that should offer a verdict on Joe Biden, a year out from the presidential vote. Americans are choosing governors in Kentucky and Mississippi, deciding legislative control in New Jersey and Virginia, and determining whether the Ohio state constitution should protect abortion rights. Elsewhere, Portugal's Prime Minister Antonio Costa has resigned after a police raid on his official residence. Authorities are investigating alleged corruption related to concessions for lithium mining and the production of hydrogen. Our Southern Europe correspondent Giles Gibson has the details.
In a televised statement that took Portugal by surprise, Antonio Costa said that he'd met with the president to hand in his resignation. He also said that his conscience is clear, but that, quotes, "The dignity of the functions of Prime Minister is not compatible with any suspicion about his integrity." Portuguese police have detained Costa's chief of staff and also named Infrastructure Minister João Galamba as a formal suspect as part of their investigation into alleged corruption at the top levels of government.
From bureaus worldwide, this is FSN.
With FSN Spotlight, I'm Simon Marks. Today and tomorrow, the latest from our old friend Matt Fry, presenter and correspondent for the UK's Channel 4 News. He is in Israel covering the crisis over Gaza. Today, Matt's thoughts on why the United States is running into pushback from Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu over President Biden's calls for a humanitarian pause in Israel's assault on Gaza. Secretary of State Antony Blinken failed to make headway over the last few days.
Here he was in Tel Aviv, beseeching virtually the Israeli Prime Minister to stop some of the aerial bombardments and not have a ceasefire. That word is now, non grata here, but to have a humanitarian pause. And what did we see last night? The heaviest bombardment of the entire war. They seem to exist in two different spheres. Israel is very motivated and still very traumatized by the death of 1,400 civilians. But the Americans are traumatized by the idea that this Israeli response is far too heavy and will exert an incredibly heavy price politically and diplomatically, not just on the United States and the rest of the Arab world, all those rather brittle regimes of oil princes and monarchs who haven't been democratically elected, but also because, of course, Israel itself will be more isolated at the end of all this.
The political consequences of the war came home to President Biden literally over the weekend, with pro-Palestinian protesters encircling the White House and calling him Genocide Joe. With FSN Spotlight, I'm Simon Marks.
Our top stories again. Israel's marked 1 month since the October 7th terror attacks, a massacre by Hamas which left 1,400 people dead. Israeli troops are now in the heart of Gaza City. Russia's formally pulled out of a key post-Cold War security deal that limited conventional forces build-up near Europe's border. And Portugal's Prime Minister Antonio Costa has resigned after a police raid on his official residence. Authorities are investigating alleged corruption. That's the latest. Feature Story News, I'm Benji Haya in Washington.
The military's newly developed unmanned Pentagon spokes drone completed its first live mission today, successfully carrying out a press conference on the war in Iraq. The Mobile Press Engagement Unit is being hailed by Pentagon officials as a revolutionary advancement in protecting military personnel.
The spokes drone proved effective at neutralizing reporters' questions about 85% of the time.
Many officials say the unit has the potential to save countless careers. Using a high-tech gimbal camera and microphone system, the unit tracks reporters' movements and audio output, then analyzes the data to assess the threat level.
It formulates and deploys an effectively vague response.
We have taken away a number of the enemy sanctuaries and gained initiatives in the areas. Eileen.
Military technology experts see the unit as adaptable to a wide variety of treacherous interview scenarios. They estimated it could even withstand situations too hostile for any human spokesman to bear, such as anti-war documentary interviews.
This is the Onion News Network.
Got Telegram? You can follow our channel there and discuss show prep with other listeners at telegram.freetalklive.com. Free Talk Live.
This is Liberty at Night with Nate and Charlie on the Free Talk Live network, coming at you from Nashville, Tennessee, and it's Dumb Bleep of the Week. It's the day of the week where the live group gets to vote on the dumbest thing said in politics. This is a response to a Ben Shapiro post. It's a response posted by Gretchen Carlson. Gretchen Carlson used to be an anchor on Fox News. I believe she was let go because of her stance on guns. She's not at Fox News anymore. Ben Shapiro is posting a clip about how he won't give up his AR-15. Gretchen Carlson says, ordinary people didn't have AR-15s before 2004. That's when the federal assault weapons ban ended, by the way. So before 2004, ordinary people just weren't, like in all time, in the history of the United States, ordinary people weren't allowed to have those. This is someone who used to be an anchor on Fox News. They're not some time-honored American tradition. They're a recent mistake that we could fix and save thousands of lives in the process. There are so many things wrong inside of that. You'd have to find the thousands of lives that are killed by our AR-15s, and you wouldn't even be able to do that. Some time-honored American tradition. It is an American tradition that the people have weapons like the military does, because the whole purpose of us being able to have guns is so we can hold off the tyrannical government. So that is a time-honored American tradition. And then there's the whole people didn't have AR-15s before 2004.
I mean, Remington has been making 223s for a long time.
The AR, let me see, I believe this goes back to something around 1959 or so, and then they got really popular in the 60s or 70s. I did look up something, just a real quick thing. Two lines of rifles, the AK-47 and Colt's AR-15 became two leading models of semi-automatic military-style rifles in the 1960s and 70s. I do think they came out in the 50s, though, although that could have been something like an AR-7 or 10 or whatever. Thanks to U.S. law, civilians had access only to the semi-automatic versions of these rifles, and they just go through how everyone was able to get them until 1994. Bill Clinton signed the assault weapons ban, which outlawed the sale of AR-15s. Didn't take away all the AR-15s or semi-automatic rifles that people had at that time. It just outlawed the sale of newly built AR-15s for 10 years, and then the ban expired. Now, they weren't as popular before the ban as a percentage of the guns that people were buying. I actually think that the assault weapons ban had a reverse effect from what people wanted. I think that it made people want to go out and get these rifles after they were no longer banned, more so than they wanted to beforehand.
Sales increased exponentially.
Yeah, so these are sales as a percentage of, well, actually, these aren't sales. These are production. So a percent of U.S. guns produced during that ban, you were more around 3% before the ban. You were like around 2% of U.S. guns produced before they were banned. So yeah, they weren't.
Even while they were banned, it was still going up.
And then while they were banned, it still increased from about,
probably because they were preparing for when the ban ended,
for about 2.5% up to 4% while they were banned. And then from that point on, they really started to shoot up. And I actually think that it is because of the ban that these guns became so popular.
Of course. But
Gretchen Carlson is just flat out wrong that people didn't have them before this. No, they weren't as common, but people had them.
Yeah.
So
that was a dumb.
So that's
a dumb.
That's part of dumb bleep number 1.
Okay.
That's part 1 of 6 of dumb bleep number 1.
She made a dumb, and then other people made a dumb about AR-15.
And then now here's the fine folks over at The View. This is them talking after the shooting.
What a great screenshot. Blow that up.
Of course, saying things.
How many opiates is she on? Wow.
Actually, I would guess probably a lot, but I'm just making that up. I have no clue whatsoever. Here's what they had to say.
Look at those eyes.
About AR-15s.
Sarah didn't get a chance to weigh in on the topic of what happened in Maine and AR-15s.
Yeah, I would love to see an assault weapons ban. Like President Reagan, I don't believe they're a sport or hunting instrument. It's like shooting fish in a bucket, but that's my
But
take.
also, if you shoot with an AR-15, let's say you shoot a deer, you can't eat it.
What? Okay, hold on. We'll go back a little bit. But first off, why does an AR-15 make the situation like shooting fish in a bucket, whereas another gun wouldn't be shooting?
I only shoot fish in a barrel.
Yeah. Well, we're talking about buckets right now.
I don't
you got
really,
fish in a bucket. To me, that pertains more to the environment that you're shooting things in. Like it's different if you're shooting fish in a bucket as opposed to a barrel or as opposed to the ocean or a lake or something. So shooting fish in a bucket, as she said, would be like when you're talking about killing people in a small enclosed space, like they're all right there and you can just kind of shoot and hit someone. I don't know that the AR-15 has to do with that. Like, it seems like any gun would work like shooting fish in a bucket in a small area.
Well, except for like a musket.
It's like shooting fish in a bucket, but that's my
But
take.
also, if you shoot with an AR-15, let's say you shoot a deer, you can't eat it. Because you basically demolish
In addition
the
to
animal.
that, but the hunt is about an actual difficult.
That's actually not true. It's not true at all. If you shoot a deer with an AR-15, you're not going to blow it up. It'd actually make a really small hole.
The confidence with which she says this,
I know.
like if you shoot a deer with an AR-15, you can't eat it. You're going to demolish the animal.
It's actually not true. Oh.
Okay, then we have Kamala Harris when she's in Australia because for some reason they had her come talk in Australia. And it's really what she says at the end of this clip right here. So let's just start halfway through.
To local authorities. And as we gather details, we must continue to speak truth about the moment we are in. In our
And the truth about the moment is that it is the moment that we are in.
Yes.
And it is true.
country today, the leading cause of death of American children is gun violence.
No. The leading cause of death are injuries from guns. Technically, for children in America, as long as you cut off the age at the specific spot, they actually, I think they go up to 18 on this one. And so anyway, they start to grab people who are technically adults. But no, it's injuries from guns, and half of those are suicides.
Yeah.
So she says
most are handguns.
Yeah, way most of them are handguns, and half of them are suicides. So when she says the leading cause of death is gun violence, some of that violence is violence perpetrated by yourself to yourself, but whatever.
The leading cause of death of American children is gun violence. Gun violence has terrorized and traumatized so many of our communities in this country. And let us be clear, it does not have to be this way, as our friends in Australia have demonstrated.
All right, so that's the Vice President of the United States talking about Australia. I always go back to this, Charlie, but at one point in time, you were called a fearmonger for saying that they wanted to take your guns. You know? You remember that?
Yep.
And now you got the Vice President of the U.S. using Australia as her example for how it doesn't have to be this way anymore.
Right. That way they can control us the way Australia government controlled their citizens during the COVID lockdown.
There's one thing.
Yep.
Yeah, so much easier to control population. And then you got Australia, who had like 2 mass shootings before they did their mandatory gun buyback program that they did. Don't quote me on that specific number. I'm probably exaggerating that just a little bit. It was probably 1. But the other thing, we don't have to go in. We don't have to go into why this would work better in a place like Australia, but a couple things you could say. Not that we're even going to consider ever doing this in the U.S. or that it would ever even be possible. If you're going to take an island that has the population of the state of California and say that you're going to control the guns in that population, it would be way easier to do that than in a place that has 10 times the amount of people, 2,000-mile long border that's got like 50 miles of fence on it. And, it's just way harder thing to do. Not that we would ever even consider doing that because it would be impossible in the first place to even try and do. There's freaking 450 million guns out there or whatever the number is.
Isn't she just riveting, by the way? Like every speech she gives.
So good.
I can't stop listening.
She's technically the number 2 most popular person behind Joe Biden when it comes to who should run for president. All right, then we got this girl, Ali Samarco. 15 seconds here of her spoiling parts of your brain. And so she says that banning weapons of war on the street isn't about infringing on you, it's about protecting you. So
imagine you're in a bowling alley with a handgun and a perpetrator walks in with a military style weapon and a bulletproof vest. There's literally no way you're going to be able to defend yourself. Banning these weapons of war on the street isn't about infringing on you, it's about protecting you.
The confidence in which these people speak.
Yeah.
Just look, if somebody walks in with a bulletproof vest
and
a military style rifle, even if you've got a handgun, there's nothing you can do. There's literally nothing you can do.
So there's one thing, this is a thing.
Well, thanks, Alyssa.
The opposite world, now she is pretending like the world that she would create or people that think like her would create is that you wouldn't have your gun, maybe you'd even have your handgun, but then that guy wouldn't walk in because he wouldn't be allowed to have that gun. But the actual world is, imagine you're in a bowling alley and you have a handgun and a guy walks in with an AR-15. And what are you going to do to defend yourself? Her other real option is, imagine you're in a bowling alley and you don't have a gun at all. And a guy walks in with an AR-15.
Yeah.
That's the real world that she's proposing because the government can't get all of the guns off the street. So I don't like pretending like that's even an option and playing that game with her. Also, there is something like, it's not like a bulletproof vest is just, has anyone ever been killed wearing a bulletproof vest? Charlie, do you think it's just like, oh, I put this on, I can go into war and not worry about anything?
Yeah.
Like, no, there's places. There's places where you can get hit. I guarantee you people have been killed while they're wearing a bulletproof vest. Okay. And you could even slow the person down or maybe even scare the crap out of them, something like that. She responds because a lot of people said things that we did. She says, literally, the replies on this show how many Republican men actually think that they could actually take out a shooter with an AR-15 with zero training. And what her alternative option is that you stay there and you wait like fish in a bucket until the cops get there or the guy decides to leave.
Yeah. Yeah. What's your plan, Allie? You're going to hold small children in front of you as you make your way to the exit? Is that your plan? Yeah. I'm glad that these people are outing themselves, though.
Yeah.
You know?
Oh, sure.
You just put her on a list. A person I would never talk to.
There you go. She's on a list.
Yeah.
You made Charlie's list. Yeah. That's tough to do, you know?
Yeah.
Matt Gaetz.
Do you know how many guns she probably could get, by the way, with the amount of Botox?
She could have,
in her face?
Have a whole arsenal.
She could have there. She could have gun safes full of guns.
The question, you see, she's not worried about this because her face is bulletproof. All right, number 2 is Matt Gaetz.
Oh, I know how much Botox is, unfortunately, because I've paid for way too much of it.
You've paid for a lot of it.
Yeah, Jesus. Man.
Okay, Matt Gaetz. Go ahead, Charlie. Number 2.
Oh, so now, okay, so that was all.
That was all number 1.
That was all dumb one.
AR-15s.
Mm-hmm. All right, number 2, Matt Gaetz. He says, Israel is a land with a 4,000-year connection to our faith. Ukraine is a former Soviet state. These are not the same thing and should be considered independently.
Okay. So, as a sitting U.S. congressman in you're deciding how the U.S. government is going to spend money to fund or not fund wars around the world. You're going to take people's tax money and you're going to decide to support or not support different war efforts around the world. I'm not sure that I'm cool with the connection to the Bible being a reason that you would use as a U.S. congressman to decide that one is different than the other. Maybe there are other more strategic reasons, or maybe you could just not support either one of them with people's money or whatever. But I do not like the idea that someone who is in the U.S. government literally coming out and saying, well, this is connected to our Christian faith, and so therefore we must defend Israel with your money. But Ukraine has nothing to do with our religious Christian faith, and so therefore we should not use your money to do anything.
Yeah, we shouldn't. Yeah. What, you feel like you're ordained by God to steal people's money and get involved in a war? It's like, I'm not saying that I'm not for like Israel. I mean, I personally believe, that it is the land that Jesus walked, but these people have been fighting about this for thousands of years. Is it my place?
I mean, even if you're religious or not religious, I think there is historical fact that it is the land that Jesus walked, even if you're, believe Son of God or not Son of God, but dude named Jesus.
But is like, I don't know. I think the gospel is different than defending a land.
Yeah.
To me, it just doesn't make sense. How does this further, let's talk purely Christian here. How does this further the kingdom of heaven? We gotta kill all the people who don't believe and make sure that a certain group of people retain. I don't understand that.
Well, it's also a weird thing. Like, let's just say that you're looking at this as a Christian. Well, like the people on this land deserve for our money to go towards them to defend their right to life, liberty, and property. But the people on the other land, because it's not our holy land, well, they don't deserve our money to go protect them, from their invasion by Russia.
Yeah.
I am not cool with U.S. strategic military decisions and taxpayer money decisions being based on the religious significance of a piece of dirt on the other side of the world.
Yeah.
That's kind of dangerous, in my opinion, because how far will you go to protect that?
Yeah.
Anyway, that's dumb bleat number 2. I don't know if you agree if that's dumb.
No, I agree with that. Yeah. No, I mean, and then it's like, so what? The innocent Jews are more important than innocent Ukrainians? And I'm not for either one of them. I hate war.
Yeah.
I hate death. And on top of that, America shouldn't be involved in any of them.
Yeah.
I am bring all the troops home kind of libertarian. Let's defend America, not everyone else. And it seems as if,
but we
talked about yesterday, Israel's in a pretty good financial position to defend themselves. And I'm pretty sure that their military is a bit better than Hamas. Last I checked. I mean, it seems as if they actually have planes. They're not paragliders.
We talked yesterday. They're at least in a good enough financial position that they should be taking out loans from us and not just be taking handouts from us. That would make much more sense.
Yeah.
Okay, dumb bleat number 3.
Like, and to Copperhead's point here, like it to me that's not what the gospel of Jesus Christ's life was about anyway. And actually, most Jews don't even believe Jesus was the Messiah.
I think that's part of
the Son of God. By the way,
specifically, I'm pretty sure.
Yeah. Now, I obviously believe that Jews are the children of God. I mean, that's very explicitly stated. However, most of them don't even believe that he's the Messiah, and it's not. So, as a Christian, believing in Jesus, like the gospel of Jesus is to exude love.
Yeah.
Love people, love your enemies, love God. It's literally all about love. So I don't think helping Israel bomb a group of people, and I'm not saying Israel can't defend themselves. I don't think we should be involved in either one.
Yeah.
And you're trying to make a case that it's okay to send our money to Israel because
based on religion.
Mm-hmm. You should be against both of them.
So if you're not religious, can you skip out on those taxes?
Yeah.
Is that cool?
And also, are you saying there's no Christians in Ukraine that you shouldn't defend?
Probably some Christians, yeah.
Like, there's no logic. This is the logical consistency is off the charts. Inconsistency, sorry. The logical inconsistency is off the charts with both the left and the right.
The consistency is below the charts.
Yeah, it's in hell. Honestly.
Nina Turner says, this is dumb in a couple different ways, but she says, if we can afford war, we can afford reparations. If we can afford war, we can afford Medicare for all, blah, blah, blah. We can afford universal child care. We can afford college for all. We can afford universal basic income. So if we can afford those things, and we can afford all of these other things, number one,
actually we can't.
We can't afford war or the other things, but we are going to find a way to put money into it. Second, the cost of all those things is way more than we're going to spend on the war anyway. Even if I was going to take the stance that like, oh, we can afford to help our friends in these countries. You're talking $113 billion to Ukraine so far, and 14.3 is what they're talking about. Which just passed the House yesterday, but not going to go through the Senate. That's not enough to pay for the, I think they were talking about trillions of dollars worth of reparations is the number people have come up with. And Medicare for all, of course, another trillions and trillions more. Universal child care, college for all, more trillions. Universal basic income, literal multi-trillions every single year. So the math doesn't math on this one either, even if you were going to support what we're doing with war.
Yeah.
You can look at what we spent in the Middle East for like the war on terror.
It's about 10 trillion.
It's something like that. Mm-hmm. I've heard 7 to 10 in
probably
those trillions.
More, actually.
And
because the DOD lost.
Yeah.
They're still trying to figure out their accounting.
We'll never know how much money's actually gone out the window over there or in the trunk of someone's car.
Yeah.
But anyway,
we're lost in the desert sand.
Number one, we can't afford it because we don't have any money.
I mean, just with our current programs we have like over $120 trillion of unfunded liabilities.
Yeah.
That's on the books.
It's a lot,
by the way.
Mm-hmm.
So
too many.
That's the 10 trillion we spent on the war on terror. Let's just say it's 10 to make it even. That's less than 10% of what our current programs are. Not adding all these other ones. Medicare for all, universal child care, college for all, reparations, universal. Those are all additional programs.
I mean, universal basic
to what we
income
already have.
Alone, you're talking a couple $1 trillion a year for that. And you're talking trillions a year for Medicare for all. Chris Christie is giving a speech because I guess he's still running for president. That's still a thing that's happening. He's talking about free speech. And of course, we've had issues with people saying mean things about Israel and people saying mean things about Jews.
It's 150 billion.
Yeah.
A month.
A month. And then it comes out. Yeah. I thought you were doing a yearly calculation when you said that. Year.
Just in universal basic income. And that's just to the 150 million taxpayers.
But if we can afford to give Israel $14 billion, we can afford $1.5 trillion. You know. It's the same thing. Same.
It would be 1.8 trillion.
Yeah.
Every year. Just for universal basic income.
Exact same thing.
And that's only giving 150 million people $1,000 a month.
Gosh, dang it.
$1,000 a month.
This whole time we forgot that math is racist.
Oh yeah, that's right.
Oh, okay.
Who cares about the numbers?
Coming right up, we're going to finish Dumb Bleep of the Week on Liberty at Night with Nate and Charlie on the Free Talk Live Network.
Hey, you are going to love the movie Victimless Crime Spree. It's hilarious, heartwarming, and carries a ton of inspiring freedom messages. Feeling down about the lack of liberty in your life? You need to put on this film with some friends and have a good laugh. It's a true story about me and my friends in New Hampshire living free, singing, dancing, and getting arrested. Of course, it's all on video, and the bad guys, the cops, judges, bailiffs, and sheriffs, they all play their part like it's out of a movie or something. You would think we scripted the whole thing, but it's real life. Go ahead and have a watch, and if it's been a while, have another look. I guarantee you'll notice things now that you didn't notice before. And the best part is that you're going to walk away feeling a renewed sense of your own power. You are the master of your destiny, and you will be free in your lifetime. Victimless Crime Spree.
From Feature Story News in San Francisco, I'm Ira Spitzer. It's been 1 month since Hamas killed more than 1,400 Israeli civilians, triggering a war in the Gaza Strip. Since then, Hamas says more than 10,000 Palestinians have been killed in Israeli airstrikes as residents brace themselves for a full incursion into the territory. FSN's Sarah Coates reports from Tel Aviv.
Well, Israel's military incursion into Gaza City certainly seems as though it could happen any moment now. Israeli forces have completely cut the north and the south of the Gaza Strip in half. Tanks, troops and other heavy artillery and machinery on the ground inside the coastal enclave. Now it comes as the families of hostages have held a vigil in Jerusalem at the Wailing Wall late Monday night, calling on the Netanyahu government to do more to bring these 242 people home before this intensive ground operation into Gaza City begins.
Millions of people in nearly 40 U.S. states have gone to the polls in elections that should offer a verdict on Joe Biden a year out from the presidential vote. Americans are choosing governors in Kentucky and Mississippi, deciding legislative control in New Jersey and Virginia, and determining whether the Ohio State Constitution should protect abortion rights. FSN's Benji Heyer reports.
These may just be local ballots on state issues, but there are potentially wider implications too. Voters' decisions could be affected by events on the national stage, and the results may set the tone for a politically turbulent 2024. Republican Party victories, for example, would embolden hopes of a so-called red wave, the retaking of the Senate in Congress in the nation's capital, and, of course, the White House. And the outcomes, whatever they are, will give an indication of what policies, abortion included, are winning or losing support for both sides. Benji Heyer, Washington.
U.S. stocks ended Tuesday's trading session in positive territory after a strong day for technology stocks. The S&P and NASDAQ indexes are now on the longest hot streak seen in 2 years. FSN's William Denzelo reports from New York.
The S&P 500 has now closed up in the past 7 trading sessions, with the Nasdaq closing up in its past 8. That marks the longest winning run for them since November 2021. As well as tech stocks, a drop in oil prices gave the markets a boost on Tuesday. The US benchmark has fallen below $80 per barrel, its lowest level seen since August. The Dow Jones closed the day up 0.2%, the S&P 0.3%, with the tech-heavy Nasdaq closing the day up 0.9%. William Denslow, New York.
From Bureaus Worldwide, this is FSN.
Our Matrix server is about as free as internet chat can be. Join the existing rooms or create your own at chat.freetalklive.com.
Liberty at Night on the Free Talk Live Network with Nate and Chuck. We're right in the middle of our favorite segment. That's Dumb Bleep of the Week. Let's get back into it. Here's Chris Christie talking, and he's upset about people saying mean things about Jews.
By and turning a blind eye to it. We know that they hide behind the falsity of free speech. There is a difference, everyone, between free speech and hate speech. There is a difference between free speech and violence. There is a difference between incitement and free speech. And what's going on our college campuses today is not free speech. It is hate speech. What's going on?
And people are clapping.
On our campuses today is...
Did we not just go through a long period of time before this happened where people on the right were arguing that, number one, hate speech didn't exist, and number two, get over it. Free speech is so you can say things that people don't like anyway, so mind your own business.
Should there be a limit on how many times you can run for president? Like once
this guy needs all the running he can get. Okay,
once you lose, I don't know, 3 presidential campaigns, like you can't run again. You didn't make it past 1% in 3 different presidential campaigns.
However, if people want to keep throwing away their money towards people, you imagine there are people who donate tons of money towards people's campaigns, knowing for sure that I'm not talking about chipping in $20 towards your local libertarian candidate on something. I'm talking about people giving over tens of thousands, hundreds of thousands of dollars from super PACs and stuff towards people that you literally know are not going to win. But you're really buying favors. You're buying favors from them in the other ways that they have power. But no, this whole hate speech thing, all of a sudden, listen, I get it. People have said really mean things about Jews lately over the last few weeks. A lot.
We don't like it.
Dumb, really dumb, hateful stuff. And they even say stuff about like wanting them to die. Stuff that I've said about socialists. I've never said I wanted them to die. If I wanted to do that, I'd just let them continue being socialists. I don't like this idea all of a sudden that now, because you're saying the mean things about the Jews, now if you're actually, I guess, incitement, like real incitement, like really you're telling people, go kill that Jew. That kind of thing.
And this is and this is exactly why I'm going to reiterate the point why we talk about being principled and logically consistent on everything, even though sometimes it's fun. Like I will admit on this show that when Ron DeSantis took away Disney's land, that was fun.
Was it?
Yes. To be like, to almost punch back against like the woke.
I was too mad about it.
The woke idiocy. I'm like, it would be cool to have the power to be like, oh, you think you can do this? Watch this. I'll take this away from you. Part of the vengeance in me, my shadow, was like, yeah, that's awesome. But because I'm a principled person, I'm like, that's wrong.
Mm-hmm.
And now all these Republicans clapping at this idiot speech, because they now want to use what the left was using against them. They want to punch back with the same thing. Be like, oh, well, this is hate speech. Then if you're going to define hate speech, we're going to define it too. And you get into this political battle, and rather than remaining logically consistent and principled and saying people can say things, you don't want other people telling you what you can and can't say. So you shouldn't be allowed to tell other people what they can and can't say. And so it's like, you're just going to get into this constant battle where the right is going to be using the same tactics that the left is using. And all you're trying to do is plug in your version of morality on other people versus just being a principled person and saying, I believe in ultimate free speech.
Yeah.
Or whatever the case is.
What people have
I
to
believe
realize,
in private property.
What people have to realize is that different people have the things that they care about. And for the right now, it's the Jews, and you don't want people saying the mean genocidal things about Jews. And I get it. It's terrible. But also the left feels that way about guys who think they're girls. And so when people on the right are out there being super mean about guys who are pretending to be girls all the time and saying mean stuff about how we shouldn't be doing these transitions and stuff like that, that's the same way that Chris Christie feels about people talking about Jews right now. And so at the end of the day, it all comes down to who has the gun. That's it.
Yeah.
And they're the ones that get to enforce their morality.
I will say Republicans have a lot more guns.
Yeah, they do.
Yeah.
All right, let's move. By the way, there's a community note on there saying that the Supreme Court has consistently and repeatedly affirmed that there is no hate speech exception in the First Amendment. This one we'll do real quick because we gotta go.
MAGA.
Dumb bleat number 5. We're not even going to go into the article because honestly, the article barely had anything to do with the title. And you know what people do these days? They come up with the title because that's all that most people read. The title says something that people want to say to other people. And so people retweet or share or whatever the title of the thing. And most of the time you end up not reading it. And so the title of this Salon article is MAGA and Christian nationalism, bigger threat to America than Hamas could ever be. And it's really just about a lot of political infighting and things. Now they bring up some of this alleged Mike Johnson guy. I don't think he's real. And this guy and how he feels about the gays and all that. And so they're talking about Christian nationalism. Of course, that's a bigger threat than killing gay people, literally.
Beheading gays.
That's a great example for everyone. You know, it's funny is when I started talking, I didn't plan on making that example, that comparison at all.
Yeah.
But yeah, that's one of them. And
wherever you live, Brian, why don't you just invite Hamas over to your gay party?
Brian Karim. Would you say Karim or Karim?
Karim.
Okay, we'll do that.
Just invite Hamas. Invite some Hamas apologists
Yeah.
Over to your next gay party that you have and see what happens.
Oh man, gay parties are the best.
And then invite some
Everyone
Christians.
knows that.
Invite some Christians. Invite some Hamas and some Christians.
Mm-hmm.
And see which one kills you first.
See who beheads who.
I don't think these people seriously.
I don't know, man. You don't take. Well, some people do. That's the problem. Some people think that this is a real thing. Okay, speaking of, let's do a couple things here. Well, let's play a couple videos. This one's called the misgendering for Dumb Bleep number 6. The first one's actually kind of funny. To be truthful with you, it's more of a white pill than a dumb bleep, but I guess the person's reaction. The background here is, if you can't see the video, is that there is a guy, there's a biological male that has long hair and makeup on that is trying to do a TikTok filter that like accentuates your features and makes you like a prettier version of the picture. And this person's getting really mad that the TikTok filter has decided that he's a man every time. So here's that.
Filter keeps misgendering me. Look. No way. No way.
Earmuffs.
Okay, we're gonna try this. Hell no. Oh my god, oh my god, oh my god, oh my god. Okay, let's try again.
That's a good one.
Oh, it doesn't matter how much Botox he has either, you know? The amount of Botox you put in your face doesn't decide what gender you are.
Okay, and then this is a person that is going around the restaurants with a phone set up and catching all the times that he gets misgendered because he is dressed up in what would be traditional women's garments with curly hair and all that and lipstick on, and is getting mad when the misgendering takes place.
It looks like he's having a nice feast.
She, her.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's okay. It's all good. But it was not all good. Hi. I use she, her pronouns. I'm not sir.
Oh, so
Yeah, like it's like a knife in the heart. I did specifically ask ahead of time not to be called sir. Yeah, I'm just going to go.
I use she, her pronouns. Sorry.
I specifically asked.
Yeah, the Sweetwater starts at, okay.
I'm so sorry. I apologize.
It's just always like a knife. It always hurts every single time. I was wondering if there's a manager I could talk to about something that happened. Yeah, I was called sir. Oh, okay. It just really sucks every time it happens. I'm sorry about that. I don't need to be called ma'am. I just need to not be called sir. You know? Thank you. Did you call me sir? Hey, I just want to tell you that the person who gave me this called me sir. God. Called me sir.
What a victim.
Such a victim.
Just like, it kind of just hurts a lot to get called sir. Very good. Thank you so much. No, thank you. I'm not a sir. I need to tell.
Yeah, just have a good man-to-man conversation with him.
It hurts more though, and it's not intentional because it means like this is sir to him. I know you didn't mean it, but I'm not a sir.
Okay, I'm done with this. I'm done.
Oh, God.
All
There's
right.
nothing to even be said.
No,
you don't have to say anything.
I don't think we have to explain why that's dumb. All right.
I'm not a sir.
We're going to go through this one really fast also. There was an executive order that we could have talked about more this week, and it is the biggest executive order. This is like 120-something page executive order on AI. It's
That
not
Biden definitely didn't write.
Not a law. Well, yeah. It's not a law, Jack. Okay, so look. This one is about AI, and one of the provisions, very important, is advancing equity and civil rights. So they're going to govern the people making AI. Go ahead, Charlie.
President Biden has signed an executive order that will require AI companies to, quote, address algorithmic discrimination.
You know those algorithms.
This from the order. Irresponsible uses of AI can lead to and deepen discrimination, bias, and other abuses in justice, healthcare, and housing. So these computers are misgendering people?
There's no telling.
The Biden-Harris administration has already taken action by publishing the blueprint for an AI Bill of Rights. and issuing an executive order directing agencies to combat algorithmic discrimination while enforcing existing authorities to protect people's rights and safety. To ensure that AI advances equity and civil rights, the president directs the following additional actions. Provide clear guidance to landlords, federal benefits programs, and federal contractors to keep AI algorithms from being used to exacerbate discrimination.
Now, I have to... So, to exacerbate discrimination, and what they mean by discrimination is that you would... For an AI having to do with landlords, contractors, stuff like that, to discriminate against someone, what they mean is it's going to look at the data and it's going to make decisions based on what it's told to do as an AI. Like a company says, find me the best landlords, find me the best tenants for this property. And it's going to look at these parameters. The parameters could be things like past convictions, credit rating, things like
evictions.
Yeah, evictions, stuff like that. And the AI is going to say, well, okay, we looked at all this and it turns out this person who doesn't have all this stuff is better. And so they're going to call that discrimination because there's going to be a disproportionate people that are minorities that are going to be affected by if a computer does what human beings used to do before they would get in trouble for it.
Yeah.
So that's what they mean by making sure that you advance equity is not paying attention to the data that's necessary to run a good business in these fields. So
the first thing it looks at, though, is skin color, obviously.
Oh, yeah, it's first thing.
No, it's looking at the choices that people have made.
Mm-hmm.
Literally, it's analyzing choices people have made in their life and whether or not they would be a good fit.
Okay, dumb bleep number 8. Okay. America, this is from MSNBC. America has a revenue problem. Blame George W. Bush and Donald Trump. Mm-hmm. Even though the national debt is rising, spending can't be blamed.
It's nothing to do with spending.
When jobs are plentiful and business profits soar, that means good news for federal tax revenues. At least that's how it's supposed to work. For 15 years after the Tax Reform Act of 1986 went into effect, that's exactly what happened. Changes in the U.S. unemployment rate were a strong predictor of changes in our federal tax revenues as a percentage of GDP. A drop in the unemployment rate caused revenues as a percentage of GDP to increase. But since the beginning of the 21st century, a series of tax cuts under the President George W. Bush and Donald Trump have shattered the link between tax revenues and employment. So what they mean is when unemployment goes down, more people are working, which means there's more money coming in through payroll taxes and income taxes. So if you see unemployment go down, you should see tax revenues go up as a share of the total gross domestic product, all the production services in our economy at that time.
Mm-hmm.
That's what they're talking about. But we're not seeing that starting around 2000.
And we're not going to look into how we calculate unemployment.
No, we're not going to look at that at all. Okay. Used to, when the numbers went down, the tax receipts as a percentage of the GDP went up. And now when the unemployment rate goes down, the answer is tax cuts were bad.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. After news that the federal deficit grew despite a strong economy amid rising interest rates, there are renewed fears about the nation's fiscal outlook. With these fears typically come calls to reduce spending. But the U.S. doesn't have a spending problem. It has a revenue problem caused by tax cuts, says this person. Now, they go into these years between 1995 and 2000, the time when the unemployment rate fell, the revenues rose from 18% to 20% of GDP. So as we're talking about these numbers, I first have to tell you, I have no clue how they got to this 18% or 20% of GDP. According to the Federal Reserve, the number has never been that high. It's only ever been about 19.5%. The only way that they could do that is if they're taking something out of the GDP, I think, or if they're keeping something now out of the revenues collected. Even the sources that this person provides under the graphs that they put in here still provide numbers that don't match what's written down in the article. So I have not figured that part out. When the unemployment fell a similar amount between 2015 and 2019, going from 5.4 to 3.7, revenues dropped from 17.9 down to 6.3. That's the equivalent of
16.
taking in 450 billion less per year. Why did this happen? Because during the same time, the Bush tax cuts and their extensions, and later the Trump tax cuts slash taxes, significantly lowering overall revenue, which is not true. The revenue has continued to just go up and up. Anyway, importantly, a disproportionate share of the benefits from these cuts accrued to very rich Americans. You could also say that as the benefits of the tax cuts accrued to people who pay taxes. Profitable corporations who pay taxes because they're profitable, and wealthy heirs to thrones, all the thrones around the around America. We don't have to go through why they're talking about the deficit and all that. I just wanted to show you, so you get the main idea of the article. We don't have a spending problem. We have a tax problem. The taxes are too low. But when you, I guess we can read the last paragraph. The first step in affecting change is proper diagnosis. Those who look to blame spending to close the primary deficit are looking in the wrong place. If not for the regressive tax cuts initiated under Bush and Trump, we would have been looking at a stable debt to GDP ratio. Any discussion of how to change our fiscal path should focus first on generating additional revenue lost to these tax cuts.
Oh, I just hate how they call it revenue.
Yeah, that part sucks. So there's a really weird thing that they do here. They show the revenues as a percentage of GDP for 2023 is 16.5%. None of the numbers back up this number. The number is actually a little over 19%. That's important because it undercuts the entire idea behind their article. Even they gave a source for this, and the source said 19.2% or whatever it was. So I don't know where they're just deciding to cut something out or put something else in and come up with 16.5. That's important because the entire argument makes no sense, because according to the Federal Reserve, we are currently at a little over 19% right now with our tax revenue to GDP, tax receipts to GDP right now. This is something that we talked about like a month or so ago. Mm-hmm. That's important because historically we sit around 17.5%. And we're actually at a height right now that we've only hit 4 years in the history of the United States. That's the amount of money that the government is taking out of the productive economy through some type of taxation. And we are actually a little over 19% right now. Like I said, there are only 4 years in U.S. history where we were at 19% or above. What's also going on right now is we are at 24% of our GDP is getting spent. So we're spending 24% of our GDP, and we are taking in 19% of our GDP in taxes. So I had no clue what this person's talking about. Charlie brought up the very first thing that you should look at when their idea is that, well, the unemployment rate went down and we should be making more money, and we're not, therefore blame the tax cuts. The thing is,
and I love the last paragraph when it's like, it has to be a proper diagnosis.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Well, your diagnosis is wrong.
But they don't talk about the labor force participation rate, which is what you should actually look at. So they talk about the unemployment rate going down. In 1995 to 2000, the labor force participation rate was around 67 point something behind my amazingly placed circle that I put on the graph, 67 point something. And then during the other time they talked about, which was 2015 to 2019, I believe we're around 62.3 or something, 62 and a half around that time. So I know that those numbers don't sound really different.
People stopped looking and stopped they stopped working and stopped looking. So now they're no longer counted in unemployment, which means unemployment goes down.
Yes. And so you can't just say that that's automatically going to equal taking in more money, because the unemployment rate going down does not mean that a bigger percentage of the labor force is working. It just means that they're not counted as unemployed anymore. And so it's just and for someone to come off so freaking pompous and better than all of us and properly diagnosing the problem and all of that, to not bring in that simple fact right there, that the year they compared it to, the year 2000, was the highest our labor force participation rate has ever been in the history of the United States. And right now we are back down to the 70s or 60s or something like that with our labor force participation rate. And so, no, you can't just use the unemployment rate to diagnose the fact that we have a revenue problem.
Look, I'm not saying, I will also let me be clear here and say that, like, if you have a business or your household, and you have a debt problem or something happening, looking to increase revenues is not a bad thing to do.
Sure.
So, but the problem is the government steals money.
Mm-hmm.
So
that is a problem.
When they're looking to increase revenue, it's how much more theft can I get? But if you're in your house or a business or whatever, obviously, if you have a solvency problem, then you're going to look to increase revenues and cut spending. But you got to do both, right? Otherwise, you go under.
Yeah, it's not like the credit card company says, they call you and they're like, hey, your bill's like, wait, we need you to pay this bill. And you're like, no, I've got a revenue problem.
Yeah.
Like, no, we need you got to get this.
Talk to my customers that aren't spending money.
Yeah, the bank calls and said, listen, your spending is out of control right now. You got deficits every month right now. You're like, no, sir, bank, tell her I've got a revenue problem. They don't care. Right. You got to spend less money. That's the answer.
Yeah.
All right.
Yeah.
Get the votes in. Get those votes in real quick. We got AR-15s for one. Number 2 was Matt Gaetz' Holy War. Number 3 is Nina Turner. If we can afford anything, we can afford everything. Number 4 is Chris Christie's free speech. Number 5 is MAGA Hamas. Same thing. Actually, MAGA's worse. Number 6 is the misgendering. Number 7 is AI equity. And number 8 is our revenue problem. Go to the Dumb Bleep voting channel and get those votes.
There's really not much to say because I don't want anyone to join the Fed Haters Club by going to joingnml.com because I don't want your money.
Honestly. You don't want it?
Nope. Don't need it.
No.
We don't have a revenue problem here.
No, we don't. No, we don't need more revenue.
The money's flowing in like honey on milk, Don't go pick up a t-shirt at godhatesfeds.com either.
Definitely not.
There's no reason why you want to do that. Sounds like Nate's going to be creating a new one. That's really an old one.
Yeah.
People want to buy it from us. So Ron Paul was right.
We're going to make it.
T-shirt. So if
we should do that for everything. You guys want a new iPhone? I'll make one of those too. Exactly. You can buy it from us. That way you don't buy it from anyone else.
Yeah. Don't buy it from communist Apple, And don't leave us a rating and review or share the show. That's the way I feel about it. Looks like we have a tie. Oh, the tie's been broken. Misgendering wins.
The misgendering is the winner of this week. If you want to get involved in the voting process, make sure you go to joingml.com. That's for our podcast, Good Morning Liberty, that we do every single day of the week. This is called Liberty at Night when we're talking to you at night. But you want to go to Join GML. We'll see you again next Tuesday night on the Free Talk Live Network.
This hour of Free Talk Live is brought to you by Dash Digital Cash. Dash is the cryptocurrency designed to be used for spending. In addition to being one of the world's first cryptocurrencies, Dash was the first crypto project to have a decentralized autonomous organization that to this day continues to improve and promote Dash. Every month, 10% of the mining rewards go into a treasury. Anyone with one Dash to spend can put forward a proposal to the Dash masternodes. The masternodes vet the proposals and decide which ones move forward and are funded by that treasury. Nowadays, DAOs are plentiful, but Dash paved the way by doing it first. Nearly